This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
Here we go on a Thursday. The Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning producing today's show. I see the video stream chat is active. Today should be interesting. How's everybody feeling? The nightmare over yet? I'm here. I'm here to take your calls, your comments, your questions, and anything else you want to throw my way. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973 is the text board. You can hit me up there. This hour, I'm wide open. So if you want to jump in on the phones, 609-573-ESPN in Jersey, 609-573-3776 in Delaware. And, of course, if you're watching the show live, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, we've got a ton of action in there. An epic collapse last night. Epic collapse. Why? Well, we could start wherever you'd like. Here's where I'll go. Two guys are at the top of the list for me. We put up a poll question. I included three, only because I know how you guys think, so I included a third guy in there. Who is bothering you the most today? And there's two guys for me. The third guy would be lower on my list. But after that epic Sixers meltdown, who's bothering you the most today? Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, Doc Rivers. As I kind of comb through social media, they seem to be the three guys getting the most. Simmons seemingly is getting the most. Rivers and Harris seem to be behind them. They're the three guys that I gave you the choice of right now. One of them is running away with this. I mean, it's 66% to 19% to 13%. One of those guys has kind of run away with it. I would say, the guy who bothers me the most today, well, there's a tie almost, but the two players that bother me the most, Doc Rivers is in an interesting situation, and we can discuss this. I actually tweeted last night. You mean this wasn't Brett Brown's fault last night? How many times was this game last night that we saw Brett Brown's fault? And I try to tell you, it's not Brett Brown's fault. This is the byproduct of having a team that is not equipped in that moment. Tobias Harris is not equipped in that moment. That was evident last night. So for someone who said, hey, look, I'm willing to give Tobias Harris a chance. He proved in the regular season that he could step up. He had some moments. He wanted no part of that game last night. Tobias Harris was scared out of his mind. He was scared out of his mind last night. 1 17 seconds left in the game was all you needed to know about what Tobias Harris is. And I will say, I was wrong about Tobias Harris this year. I thought Tobias Harris had taken that step up to the next level in terms of as at secondary scorer. A secondary scorer. He looked like he was willing to take a shot here. He was willing to take the big shot there. And I say big shot. They went to him in big moments of games. But he wanted no part of that game last night. None. So you've now found out that you cannot rely on Tobias Harris late in a game in a big spot. There's 1 17 seconds left in that game. 1 17 seconds left in that game. And you are down a point. Trae Young makes the third of 3 free throws. And after that, with 1:17 left to go, it is 105-104, right? 105-104 is the score. Actually, I think Philadelphia might have been winning the game at that time. Were they up 105-104? No, it was Atlanta 105-104. Sorry. 105-104, Atlanta's leading. You're down one. Harris has a baseline path to the basket wide open for a layup. And what did he do? He took it to the basket and passed it to Embiid, who promptly threw it right back to Harris, and Harris got a shot blocked by John Collins. The Hawks got that rebound. That was the whole fray where they reviewed it. And at that moment right there, you knew Tobias Harris, he wasn't the guy. He missed the pull-up jumper at 149. He missed the layup he didn't want at 117. He had a bad pass at 310. I mean, Harris, to me last night, he's your number 2 guy. He scored 4 points. He scored 4. Unacceptable. Can't win a game when Tobias Harris goes 2 for 11, 4 points last night. And forget the 4 points, because if he makes the layup, maybe they win the game. He didn't want to be there. He didn't want that moment. Those 4 points, I mean, unacceptable. Now, I get it. Curry scores 36, Embiid scores 37. When have you ever seen a night where 2 guys, and it's Curry and Embiid, are leading the way? They didn't have another double-digit scorer the entire game. The only 2 players who scored in the second half were Embiid and Curry. They're the only 2 that scored a field goal in the entire second half. Seth Curry turned into Steph Curry last night. So Harris, to me, is all the way up on the top of the list because he did not want any of it. Now, we always talk about this team is Joel Embiid in the paint. It's Tobias Harris getting his 22 points or whatever he scores. And then the 2 shooters, Curry and Green. And then you have Ben Simmons. And Ben Simmons last night this was the game where you say, all right, in the fourth quarter, we are struggling. They have taken Joel Embiid away because Embiid, quite frankly, didn't play very well in the fourth quarter either. I think he was 1 for 5. In fact, Embiid didn't play very well in the whole second half of the game last night. Now, to sit here and rip a guy who had 37 points and 13 rebounds, that's not me. But he did not play very well in the second half either. It was Seth Curry. Without him, you're not in this game. But obviously, Ben Simmons was a problem last night. And Doc Rivers has an issue here. And I don't envy his position at all because Doc Rivers is in a spot where people are going to blame Doc Rivers. All right, people are blaming Doc Rivers today. The coach's fault. He's at fault. He was terrible last night. What would you like Doc Rivers to do? He has a point guard, as you guys call him, all right, that doesn't want to shoot. He can't shoot free throws. Then he goes to the bench, and people complain that he went to the bench. So he went to the bench unit last night, and people are complaining that he went to the bench unit for too long. Well, guess what? He had a starter in Tobias Harris who had 4 points, and he had another guy that you guys don't want to play either. So who is Doc Rivers supposed to play now? Right? Who is Doc Rivers supposed to play? So this is what I say. Okay, you can blame Doc Rivers. He didn't do this. He didn't do that. What is he supposed to do? He's going to have to, he has his hands tied. He has now gone all the way on one side. He said this last night about Ben Simmons.
You play minutes without Ben, right, during the game. And so I think we're equipped for that, and we're ready to do that. Obviously, we did it again tonight. Do you want to do that is a better question, and the answer would be no. But, when Ben makes them, we get to keep them in. When he doesn't, we can, and that's just the way it is. Some nights we still do. If it's working our way in the first half, we kept them in because we were actually increasing the lead, and we felt like they were getting in foul trouble. Fourth quarter, you don't really worry about foul trouble, so then you have to make them.
So he's got his hands tied in this situation. By the way, they tried to hack a Ben, and Ben stepped up to the line and made a couple. He made the 2 at the one point. They fouled Simmons. So the whole hack a Ben thing really didn't come into play all that much. It was the ones that he got fouled on by just the flow of the game at points that really became a problem because they fouled him the one time, and he made both of them. So once he made the 2, they got away from doing that. It's de facto 4 for 14. Look, everybody knows the number, 37%, whatever Ben Simmons, 32, 33, whatever it is. It's unacceptable. During the course of the year, he shoots 60%. If he shoots 60% in these playoffs, this series is probably over by now. But Rivers is in a spot where people want you guys want him to take Simmons off the court. But when he takes Simmons off the court and then you put someone else in, you're saying that he's playing the bench guys too long. So last night he's running the second unit out there. By the way, the starters went back into the game with a double-digit lead. So now we're saying the starters can't hold a double-digit lead. Look, I'm the first one to tell you, I said it yesterday, but the starters last night played 38, 39, 38, 38, and 29 minutes was your starting unit last night. I mean, everybody out there played pretty much 40 minutes of basketball last night. Hey, I don't care. Play them the whole game. You want to rip Rivers for something, you could say, all right, they didn't play enough minutes last night. I would have done what the Nets did. I would have said, we need this game, and we have to have it no matter what. You guys got to play the whole game tonight. Fine. I don't have any problem with that. But his starters weren't producing at all. He had two guys producing for him last night, Curry and Embiid. But that being said, the players that he had last night, Tobias Harris was unacceptably awful. And Ben Simmons has lost total confidence in this series. He's lost total confidence. Ben Simmons has become what Fultz was. You remember when Fultz was here and he made a three-pointer and the whole place went crazy cheering for him? They just cheered because Markelle Fultz made a three-pointer. The fans last night were trying to will Ben Simmons. They were trying to cheer a professional basketball player who, by the way, is a three-time All-Star and a third-team All-NBA player. And they're trying to cheer for this guy to simply make a free throw. At that point, you realize that this guy has lost it mentally when it's come to that. When it's come to they are panning shots of the crowd and there are people showing him and trying to teach him how to follow through on a free throw. At that point, you know Ben Simmons, who, by the way, this isn't a Ben Simmons sucks. This isn't a Ben Simmons stinks or you were wrong about Ben Simmons. No, this is a kid who has absolutely, completely lost confidence playing for this team right now. And the look on Joel Embiid's face last night said it all. He understands we don't have enough because my Batman didn't want to be here. And the other guy who we have such a unique need for isn't good enough right now either. Embiid's face said it all. He knew it. When this thing was going down, Embiid's face was, we ain't good enough. Because the guy that we put our faith in, and who, by the way, all season long, Tobias Harris, he was a different guy. He looked like a different player. The guy we put our faith in last night, he didn't have it last night. And I don't know that he does. And by the way, the Sixers shot 43% from three-point range last night and lost. 43. Steph Curry had 7 of 12. They shot 43. Thibault hit 2 of 2. I mean, you lost that game last night up by 26. And think about this. Everybody's talking about this guy, that guy, this guy. You lost at home for the second time in this series. You lost at home for the second time in the series. You work all year long to get that number 1 seed. And you lost twice now in this series. Totally monumental fail last night. Across the board, upside down and inside out. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Do you guys still think the Sixers don't need Simmons to score? Yeah, absolutely. They didn't need Simmons to score last night. It would have been helpful if the guy, Harris, who averages 20 a game, scored more than 4. They didn't need Simmons to score last night. They could have used him to make a couple free throws, but they didn't need him to score. They needed Harris to score. If you figured it out by now, they don't ask Simmons to score. They didn't need to ask him to score last night. They needed their number 2 scorer to score more than 4 points. Now, because he doesn't score more than 4 points, the trickle-down effect becomes, well, he only scored 4. So now a guy who averages 20 only got you 4. Tough to make up Now, Curry did his best to try to make it up, but they didn't need Ben Simmons to score. They needed Tobias Harris to get around his average. And if Harris is around, but quite frankly, at the end of the night, Simmons was closer to his average than Harris was to his. Simmons, sadly, he only took 4 shots. He made 4 free throws. He had 8 points. What's he average? 12, 13? Harris averages 20. He scored 4. Korkmaz had 8. That's about what Green gives you. Curry had 36. Now, I get it. He shot 19 times, which some of those shots were taken from Embiid because Embiid would typically shoot 25. He only shot 20. But Harris is 2 for 11. He scored 4. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. You know, one thing in this series that you find out in these series is how much can the guys do in the playoffs what they did in the regular season. And we kept saying, we're going to find out if Tobias Harris is Tobias Harris. And for the most part, Harris has been pretty good in these playoffs, right? For the most part, Harris has been pretty good. I wouldn't say he has been nearly as consistent in these playoffs that he was in the regular season. No, not even close. But for the most part, there was a game here or a game there. You're like, man, I'm really disappointed in Harris. But then the next game, he kind of picked it up. This is 2 games now where Harris, I thought, kind of let them down. But obviously, the whole Simmons thing, it's gotten to the point where I think even Rivers is now lost. He doesn't know what to do with them. Rivers wants to believe in the guy because he understands how good the player is. So he's saying to himself, I can't really sit this guy. I can't justify this. He's too good. But at what point now does Rivers have his hands tied so much that he has to do something drastic? Now he's trying to dance around it, but he plays him here. He takes him out there. And at that point, I think you've lost him. The way that Rivers is trying to kind of dance around this, I think he's lost him. He looks like he's got a guy who's completely lost. He doesn't know what his role is now. And you might have lost this guy. To which, by the way, if they lose this series and this is the end result, you essentially now are going off this offseason trying to figure out, do I need to trade him? That's where you're at. If they lose this series, which is a possibility now, strong possibility, you have to consider whether or not, I'm Daryl Morey. I watched this whole season. Can this be a team that gets any farther than this second round? Remember, it was Brett Brown's fault. They should be going farther. Well, now you got a new coach. Sometimes it's not the coach. Sometimes you have a bunch of players, and this is all they are. And I think Embiid is seeing that right now. You saw it in his face last night. So, look, people are talking about you're playing 4-on-5. Look at the Nets the other night. They played 4-on-3. They played 5-on-3. If you have a player that's dynamic enough, that doesn't matter. You can figure out ways to use them. Golden State uses Draymond Green. He has basically no offensive game, but they use him in a way that helps them out. The Bucks are essentially the same situation. They have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who basically is a one-dimensional player. If you figure out the way to use that, the Sixers had used him very well. Whatever happened last night, and I said before, them not having Danny Green, I think, is a lot bigger than people gave it credit for. And all season long, they did a really good job. But if you watch that game last night, they ran the same play the entire second half. They ran the same play. It was a 2-man game between Curry and Embiid. That was the whole game, the second half of the game. That was it. That's all they ran. 2-man game, 2-man game, 2-man game, pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll. Those two guys, that was it. Because they had no trust in anybody else. No trust in anybody else. All right, we're just getting started. We'll take your calls, questions, comments, text 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. And by the way, if the Sixers put Ben Simmons up for trade, I would imagine they would get quite a haul. So I'm imagining if they lose this series, Daryl Morey is going to be taking phone calls immediately because they're going to get a haul for Ben Simmons. There's teams around this league that'll say, "I'll take him off your hands." No questions about that. So they got to start to weigh that if they lose this series. What kind of haul can we get back there? Because it's almost getting to the point now where I don't know that the kid wants to be around here anymore. You know, for whatever reason, it's not working out. I know everybody thinks they know basketball. Everybody knows everything. I would imagine that Ben Simmons will have quite a bunch of teams lining up to get him. Tobias Harris, another problem. You got a max deal. You've got the super max coming for Embiid, and you've got Simmons on a contract that's going to pay him over $40 million at the back end of this deal. And by the way, the coach, he just signed a 5-year, $40 million deal. Okay? So I've already heard people saying you got to fire Doc Rivers. I would ask people, what coach do you like? Which coach isn't it their fault? That would be something to find out. Because every game on every NBA night, I feel like the coach is always the guy who gets blamed. Which coach doesn't get blamed? That would be an easier answer. Because every coach is the wrong coach. They don't know what they're doing. They all stink. So you can answer that question over at 973 ESPN. Who's bothering you the most today? Harris, Simmons, Rivers at 973 ESPN. All right, 2:27 here on a Sports Bash Thursday. Real quick, Harris last night had 4. He averages 21. That's a difference of 17. Simmons averages 13. He scored 8. That's a difference of 5. I'll take Harris scoring 17 more to get closer to his average. Does Simmons need to score from the line? Yeah, 1,000%. But this goes back to you're almost, I don't want to say accepting, but you know that he's not going to step at the line and make those free throws. But what I can expect is Harris to get me closer to 21 than just 4. So while Simmons deserves high level blame in this game last night, it's that people don't like Simmons. So they go after him more, and that's fine. You could be like, hey, I told you so about Simmons because you think you know because Simmons doesn't make free throws, and that's the easiest thing to do. You know, any shamoke out there can make free throws because you can make free throws. You feel it's embarrassing that he can't. But if you take a step back and take your Sixers fan hat off a second, Tobias Harris scored 4. He averages 21. That's a difference of 17 points. Simmons scores 13. He scored 8. That's a difference of 5. Which player was more off of what he normally does? Yeah, he missed 10 free throws. Unacceptable. But in the end, he gave you about as many points as he typically does. Harris scored 17. That's not anywhere near. He scored 4. That's not anywhere near. It's easy to say Simmons because most people out there either like or don't like Simmons. But saying that, he was an epic fail last night. In the fourth quarter, he doesn't want to shoot. He has completely lost confidence. Completely lost confidence because of the whole free throw thing. He doesn't want to get to the line. He understands, and this is the whole Simmons problem. He passes. He doesn't want to shoot because he understands I'm not the best person to shoot. So he passes to other guys who he looks like he's the guy who says, I want to set other guys up and give them the best looks and the best shots. That's what he does. Well, and that's why he doesn't want to shoot that much because he doesn't feel that he's the best option on offense. So he passes and lets other guys shoot. Well, he doesn't want to get to the free throw at all now because it's turned into a joke, right? It's turned into a joke when he gets to the free throw line. The fans are up on their feet cheering for the guy, which it's admirable that they're it's like remember when Pat Burrell signed that contract and he was terrible. He was hitting under 200. And every time he would come up, the fans would just start clapping for Burrell because like they wanted him. But now you've almost made this turn into a joke. It's like, hey, here you go. We're going to cheer for you to shoot free throws. So I don't think that's the best way to go at it either. But in the end, again, I mean, I'm just looking at this over. I got one guy that scores 21 a game. He scored 4. That's a 17-point difference. Sure, you can rip Simmons all you want, and I'm right there with you. Do I want him to score more in that game last night? He only gave me 8. He averages 13. Yeah, absolutely. I would like for him last night to give me more, considering the fourth quarter you had 2 guys score. But in the grand scheme of things, over the course of that game, if I got Harris closer to his average, and I'm not asking him to score 21, he scored 4. He was 17 off of what he normally gives me. That is the biggest difference in the game, is where he was off. And I know people want to go to Simmons. He was the number 1 pick, and everybody either likes him or they don't like him. He doesn't shoot, so the whole not shooting thing is an easy target. But Tobias Harris gets paid the same amount. He has a max deal. We're allowed to also say that guy was being counted on more this year. He was being counted on more. Simmons is easier. He was the number 1 pick. So obviously the easiest take is to go after him. And he is not absolved of this. But the actual guy that bothers me, the question was, who's bothering you the most? 4 points out of my number 2 scorer. 4. 4. And look, Joel Embiid scored 37. I thought in the second half he did not play very well. You look at what Durant did the other night when he basically said, I'm going to score 50. It might have been a game where Joel Embiid said, you're not doing it, you're not doing it, you're not doing it, you're not doing it, give it to me. And he didn't have it either last night. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Glenn, the EHT, what's going on, Glenn?
Yo, Mike. Yeah, when I'm talking about Ben Simmons, listen, he's a basketball player. He's a good player. But to me, he's a glorified role player. And I feel like you and other people have just accepted that his game is what it is, and he's not expected to get any better, Mike. I mean, I'm not asking him. We know he's not having 30-plus on any kind of regular basis. But, dude, come on. You're the point guard. You have the ball in your hand more than anybody for the most part. I know he comes down hard on transition, but when they're in the half court, he's not even an option. I mean, he's not even coming back to the ball. I just feel as though his game hasn't gotten any better, Mike, since he's been in the league. There's no other options. He hasn't done anything to get better. Now the free throws come into play too. Mike, I just think he makes all the money. He's out there. He has that arrogant look on his face, and then he comes up with 8 points. Come on, Ben. And he hasn't gotten any better, Mike. I guess that's the blunt of my point is his game is the same. I'm not expecting him to turn into Durant. I'm not expecting him to shoot. But just make your game better. Just make it that you are in a position and you are an option.
Yeah.
To me, he's not even an option on offense.
Well, and I agree with that, crazy. Glenn. If I am looking at him as an individual, I agree with you 1,000%. It's very frustrating that he's the same offensive weapon, essentially, that he was when he came into the league. Maybe just a little bit polished more, stronger, yada, yada, yada. But the team does not use him in the role that the fans want them to. That's what I'm trying to say is the team does not utilize him like you guys want them to. They don't say, Ben Simmons, go out and score 25 points a game. They say, go out and help Seth Curry score 15 a night. Go let Joel Embiid score 30. Be the reason that those guys are better players. And the problem becomes, like Tobias Harris, he was a very good player during the regular season. Some of that is because of what Ben does for those players. The problem becomes in the playoffs. Can you count on that guy? And now apparently you can't.
But because of all the accolades and the money that Simmons makes, I just think I know he's not supposed to be the primary scorer, but when Joel looks at him or even Harris, whoever looks and says, man, I ain't got it tonight, man.
Yeah, no. I agree. And look, those are the times. Those are the times when I agree when I say, look, when I tell you and everybody, he can score more if he wants to. Like Giannis, you would agree that Giannis's offensive game is very limited.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, the difference is
the rim, it's buckets.
The difference is Giannis will take the ball to the basket 25 times a game. You know why? He doesn't have anybody else to contend with touches. Like, he doesn't have Joel Embiid. He doesn't have Harris. He doesn't have Curry shooting threes. He's the offense. So go take it 35 times. That's what I say. If the Sixers used Simmons the way they use Giannis, he could score that many points. He's got the same type of game, but the Sixers don't ask him to do that.
He has to be somewhat of a reliable option when those guys don't have it.
Well, I'll tell you this.
Can't look at Ben and think he's bringing it.
I will tell you this, and we all, like Giannis is an MVP, two-timer. We're getting to the point now watching him. Do you really feel that he could be the best team on the team that wins with the limitations he has?
Oh, everybody's getting exposed in these playoffs. Absolutely. You're getting to see what players are, what they are. And
absolutely. And I think the Sixers, but I think Doc Rivers and the Sixers understood that and said his limitations, we cannot utilize him the way that we would like to. So we have to hide what he doesn't do well and accentuate what he does do well. The problem is people want him to score, and the Sixers have said that's not what he is. He is not a scorer. The problem is they don't have a secondary scorer that they can trust in that moment. That's the problem.
Ben has got to become a better player. And if Daryl Morey's watching what we're watching, he's ready to move on. It's only a matter of time. We'll see how.
Oh, and I don't disagree with you there, Glenn. Appreciate the call. I don't disagree with you. I think Morey said, look, there's two ways I think Morey's looking at this. One, we had a short offseason. Rivers didn't have a lot of chance to really work with this crew because of COVID. And They went from a 6 seed to a 1 seed. There wasn't a lot of expectations for this team. I'll give him another shot. Or he's saying, I think I've seen enough. We know the limitations of this group. What this group is a second-round team, and I got to do something to do it. I shook it up a little. I got contracts out of here, and now it's time for me to make my James Harden move. These are the options I think that Daryl Morey has to kind of consider right now. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. You know, I think, too, like you could be, and you should be, 1,000% critical of Ben Simmons, all right? You want him to be more. He should be better. Totally understand that. 1,000%. Ben Simmons is way at the top of the list of why this team, by the way, not only why they lost last night, why they lost the night before. If there's a 1 and a 1A, Ben Simmons is on that list every single time. Because, quite frankly, it's almost like blaming the quarterback for a loss in football. Because he controls the pace and the tempo of the game. And for the second night in a row, Ben Simmons got the pace and the tempo ripped out of his heart because he wanted no smoke last night. So if you want to blame someone way at the top of the list, it's Ben Simmons. Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons co-share tonight in the epic meltdown of that game. Ben Simmons' mental fragility in that game last night was 100% at the top of the list why they lost that game. I'm not diminishing or minimizing his role in that loss last night. I'm just saying, if you look at the points, your guy, and look, I feel like Tobias Harris is almost getting a pass because people don't like Simmons that much. Tobias Harris averages 21 points a game in the playoffs. He's your number 2 scorer. For him to score 4 is criminal. Look, Simmons, you could be pissed off at him, but you at least have come to expect that he's only going to score 8 to 13 points. I don't know what you're surprised about. I guess it's more flabbergasting to me. Why are you surprised that Simmons only scores 8? He only averages 13 a game. So, of course, he's going to score less. Curry had 39, so somebody's points are going down, but you can't go from 21 to 4. If you're going to score 21 a game, you got to give me double digits. And guess what? If Curry gets me if Harris gets me the double digits, they win the game last night. Even with look, Simmons has to play better, but we're going to Simmons for the one reason: you simply don't like him. This isn't you're sticking up for Simmons. You can't criticize. I'm criticizing Simmons to the moon. He's number 1 or 1A on the list of why they lost. Not only last night, the night before too. He is 1 and 1A. Boom. But the frustration you have is because you want something more than what he's giving you. He scores 13. He scored 8. Harris scores 21. He gave you 4. And for someone to score 4 and not be the runaway winner for why they lost that game last night is pretty crazy, don't you think? The guy who almost pretty much got his average last night. Now, the problem is you don't like what his average is. But he didn't give you much different than he normally does. That poll question is up right now, 609-403-0973. After that epic Sixers meltdown, who's bothering you the most today? Harris, Simmons, Rivers. Right now it's 65%, 20%, and 14%. There's a runaway winner so far. You got time to vote at 973 ESPN. We'll pop that back to the top of the page so you guys can see it on the Twitter page. A lot of text. Got people hanging on hold. We'll get to you on the other side. As I told you, this hour wide open. Keith Smith at 320. Mark Jackson, 440. He had a very passionate rant last night. You're going to want to stick around for him. We might have another special guest for you on that game last night. A rank report tonight with Todd at 5 in the 5 o'clock hour. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. I like when you say Ben Simmons was the number 1 or 1A, and people say, are you not allowed to criticize Simmons? I'm telling you, he was the biggest problem they had last night. Number one. I'm just looking at it numerically and saying and look, quite frankly, it's because I'm someone who said Tobias Harris has sold me. I believe that Harris has now taken a jump from good player to very good player. And he still is a good player, but he doesn't want that moment. He didn't want that moment last night. And that disappoints me more than anything, is that here's a guy who gives you 20 a night, 21 a game. He gave you 4. 4. So I would almost be flattered if I was Simmons to be number one on the list next to that. You included me on the list of how bad we were last night next to a guy who missed his average by 17 points? 609-403-0973. Stick around. More Bash next. All right, 247. We'll open up the phones and take some calls here. We'll get texts in the 3 o'clock hour, 609-403-0973. By the way, people are saying that Harris isn't an all-star. Simmons is. Simmons doesn't make the all-star team to score. They don't put him on the all-star team and be like, hey, we're going to get 35 points out of this guy. He's on the all-star team for the other things that he does, not because he's a scorer. I mean, have you not figured that out by now? Tobias Harris, who, by the way, they ran plays for all season long for Tobias Harris. They didn't run anything for him last night. You know why? Because they didn't believe in him. The one time they gave Harris the ball late, he passed it. But don't say, oh, Simmons is an all-star and Harris isn't. Simmons doesn't make the all-star team because he scores. So because he made an all-star team, all of a sudden, miraculously, that means he should score 35 points. I mean, this is what you deal with on a day-to-day basis. My God. Let me go to Archie in Ocean City. What's up, Archie?
Hang on, let me get you off speaker. I got to say, I thought Doc Rivers did an unbelievable job all year, but I think it's his game last night. When you got a 26-point lead and the other team just keeps doing the same thing and they don't change it up, I think he made a terrible – I just thought he coached a terrible second half.
Well, I agree to some extent. Like Seth Curry is on Lou Williams, and they're just going after him every single time down the court. You make some adjustments on the defensive end. But I will say this. The first unit, you got Ben Simmons and you got Tobias Harris, who are essentially giving you nothing offensively. So people were complaining that he stuck with the second unit too long. Well, the first unit of guys wasn't giving you anything either.
Yeah, I'm not even complaining about this because I understand that they had limitations last night. But, I mean, you know what you got with Simmons. He can't score. I mean, we know that. And I think he's out of position at the point guard. I think, I'd even play Maxey, make him run around with Trey because Ben's not covering him. He can't cover that guy. He had 39 and 16 assists last night, something like that.
Well, I mean, the first game they tried to play somebody else on Young. They switched to Simmons. Simmons kind of kept him in check. The problem is the Sixers have had this problem of what did Doc say the other night? Maxey's the worst defender that we have on the team. He actually vocalized that. He said he's the worst defender. The Sixers don't. Okay. Every time they play a team that has a smaller guard, they have issues.
Okay, well, see, I haven't seen Maxey play enough defense. I guess I don't watch the tapes or anything like that. But, I mean, at least he's fast. He can run, can harass him, take his 6 fouls. Whatever.
The problem is, though, somebody's saying, how do you go for the pump fake on him every single time? Well, that's why Trae Young's really good. He's a
great player.
Yeah, he's a creative offensive player.
He's a lot like Iverson. He can shoot a little better, probably. But that being said, again, I mean, go a 3-2 zone, do whatever. You got to change the way that game's going the last 10 minutes. I mean, put Simmons.
Well, here's the challenge, Archie. Here's the challenge is you're normally having a guy like Harris make some shots for you late in the game. When you're in a stretch late in the game, and now I'm saying one of my main options, I already know Simmons is not an option. That's why I'm not all that surprised. The part is I'm the coach, and I say, all right, I got Joel Embiid, I got Simmons, and I got these two shot makers. Well, one of the shot makers is off because he's hurt. The other guy's not shooting, and he's not doing anything. So now what am I going to do? He essentially became a two-man offense.
I got a solution again, and it may be wrong, but at this point in time, we're kind of desperate. I mean, Maxey can get to the rim. Maxey can score.
Yep.
I mean, when Simmons got the ball down the stretch, they don't have to slough off to keep him from getting to the rim because he's not going to score even if he gets to the rim. They don't care if they foul him. So Ben's got to play a 4. He's got to play down low, and he's got to cover Collins or something, take him out of the game.
Well, here's one problem, March, and it's a good call, and I'm glad you brought this up about Maxey. I appreciate it, man. Maxey excelled in the Washington series. Why? Washington's got Neto and Ish Smith, smaller guards that Maxey can take the ball to the basket on. In this series, you're not seeing as much of Maxey because the Hawks are a bigger team. And Maxey, in the few minutes he hasn't had nearly the impact in this series because he's having a tougher time in the paint. They've got Gallinari, they've got Capella, who's a good rim protector. Their guards on the outside are a little bit bigger and physical than the Washington guards. So Maxey's having a better time against Washington. Their guards don't defend. Neto can't defend. Ish Smith don't defend. So the matchups were more in their favor in Washington. Tom in Summers Point, what's up, my man?
Michael, you're great at deferring the issue at hand. Let me ask you a little real quick, though. 3-time All-Star, how does he get voted to the All-Star team? Fan voting or
the coaches select him.
Okay.
Because he hasn't been a starter in the All-Star game, which means if you are being selected, you are being selected by the players and coaches.
Okay, so, Michael, let me ask you a question. What 3-time All-Star can't be on the rink in the fourth quarter, the court, or the field in the fourth quarter when the game's on the line? Name one.
Well, yeah, if you have a 3-time All-Star that you anticipate scoring a lot of points, he is being selected by the coaches.
No, Mike, he can't. Yeah, but Mike,
I'm saying he's being selected by the coaches,
game's on the line.
but he's not being picked for the All-Star team to be a scorer late in the All-Star game.
Mike, he can't be on the court in the fourth quarter when the game's on the line. Mike, you said he shot 30-something% from the field free throw line. Do your math. He shot 20-something%, Mike. You say we don't like Ben Simmons, and then you defer. Well, you should be on.
No. I'm telling you, he shot 32%. 32.8 is his free throw percentage.
Wasn't he 4?
I said for the playoffs, not last night.
Okay, I'm talking about last night, Mike. I'm talking about last night. Let's not talk. See, that's how you defer stuff. You act like we're idiots and we don't like Ben Simmons just because we don't like him. Mike, you know what? I would love to love him, but this is what I don't like, Mike. I don't like that you can't have him on the court late in the game because he is a detriment to the team.
I don't blame you.
We can't pay him, and we so why wouldn't I not like him? Or let's forget that we don't like Ben Simmons. Let's say, Mike, we want him to be traded. We want to move on from him. Forget saying we don't like him because you get misconstrued. You're idiotic with your bullshit crap. You always defer. Well, I'm not talking about Tobias Harris, Mike. How can we back a player that can't shoot over 30% from the field?
Well, I'll tell you why, Tom, because when someone like you and me and people grow up, right? And thanks for the call, Tom. You're a great man, and I appreciate it. I do. Sometimes you make me laugh. Sometimes you make me cringe, but I enjoy you. When we all grow up, there's one thing we do. We go in the driveway and we shoot a basketball. So on that level, we feel that if given the opportunity, we could shoot because that's the basic fundamental of that particular game. Shoot. Just shoot it. Here's a player who frustrates the heck out of people because he's deemed to be a great player, yet doesn't have the fundamental that Tom in Summers Point and Archie in Ocean City and Glenn in EHT all have. You guys probably can shoot. And yet this guy is at a level that you can only dream to be at, and he doesn't do the thing that you can go out in your garage driveway and do. And that's what frustrates us. Totally get it. Totally understand. I could shoot. It's one thing that I could do in that game is I could shoot. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Your texts are next.
All of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
He is hit. He stumbles. He's down.
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. We got another open segment for you guys before Keith Smith from Sport Rack joins us, who covers the NBA, and he's going to tell us why Joel Embiid's season is going to have a big financial impact on the Sixers as well. That's coming up in about 20 minutes from now. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. It's brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan, the all-new Matt Blatt Nissan, now open Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, online, mattblattnissan.com, 609-403-0973. I will answer as many texts that come in today, and all the stuff on the video I will be getting to. All right? So let's go down the video list here and kind of go and see what you guys are saying today. Let's see. Tony says, can't wait to hear the Simmons apologist today explaining 4 for 14 from the line, 4 shots, played little D in the second half. 2 games in a row, he's a liability. It's criminal how he played. Most of that we agree with, 100%. Can't explain the 4 for 14. Look, he shot 60% from the free throw line during the season. Somewhere in that season, it began to drop to the point now he can't be trusted on the free throw line. 100% agree with that. And I also agree with the other part about the defense in the second half. He was not impactful defensively either in the second half. 2 games in a row. I agree with that, Tony. 2 games in a row, Simmons has been at the top of the list of part of the reason why the Sixers, it was a team loss last night, but he's at the way top of that list. If you have 3 spots to blame people, he's in there, right at the top. So I don't think that anybody can really make a solid argument for Ben at all. 4 for 14 is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. Point blank. Right? 609-403-0973. Let's see what else we got here. This is Tony. He also said, Mike, you said you feel bad for Giannis. I feel bad for Ben. The team is fouling you, knowing you do not want to shoot foul shots, which works is the coach knows it too and takes you out. I agree. I'm getting to the point where, yeah, I feel bad for the guy in terms of the crowd's cheering for him to make free throws. I think that's weak sauce. I know it's the intent is good. Like, hey, we're backing you. I don't think it helps. I don't think it helps to put the guy at the line and the place is cheering for him to try to make a free throw. But I agree with you. He's at the point of no return, I think, with the free throw. Right? Clark Burns is watching on Facebook. Once again, Doc Rivers goes to the bench, who blows a 22-point lead to 11 and has to quickly bring all the starters in who seem to be phased out of the game. Ridiculous. The bench is so sick. That's a tough one. I mean, I said yesterday I would play the guys as much as I can, 40-plus minutes. They all played almost 40 minutes a game in the game. But I agree. I don't have a problem saying that the starters should have played more. Right? But the problem was your starters weren't playing that well in the second half either. So there really wasn't a right button to push there. I pushed the bench button. They weren't very good. I pushed the starter button. They weren't very good either. You bring your starters in with a double-digit lead, and they couldn't hold it. I mean, your bread and butter is that your starting team plays defense. And they gave up 40 in the fourth quarter last night. Jason Downey, looking back, maybe trading for Lowry would have been a decent idea. Could have used someone like that last night. Well, Lowry would have certainly helped this team out. There's no arguing that. George Hill, by the way, hasn't given you enough. Right? Hasn't given you enough. Not even close to enough. 609-403-0973. Chris Crawford. The blame goes to everyone. They just watched the lead go away, and no one tried to take over. It was like a hot potato with the ball. I agree with the fact that, yes, that was a team loss last night. Nobody stepped up. But the guys at the top of the list, even Joel Embiid, I don't think played very well in the fourth quarter of the game last night. I think he only had one bucket in the fourth quarter last night. If memory serves, I'll have to go back and look through the box score. But I'm pretty sure that Joel was 1 of 5 in the fourth quarter, and I don't think he was much better in the third. What do you have at halftime last night? So it's hard to sit here and rip a guy who had 37, but you know what? He had 37 and kind of flatlined after halftime. That might have been one of the nights where Joel Embiid says, 37's not enough. I need to give you 45. Sucks to say that, but the elites, that's what they do. Look what like Durant, what he did the other night. Even like Paul George last night had 37 points without Kawhi, although I don't think he played very well in the fourth quarter either. It was Reggie Jackson who had the big night. If you were watching that game, Reggie Jackson was ridiculous last night, right? Where did he come from? Jeez. He was Lou Williams last night. But Joel Embiid might have had to say, look, my guys aren't getting it done tonight. I got to do it. It's okay. Some nights it's that night. What else we got? We got a lot over here. You guys are doing a great job today. 609-403-0973. Chris also said, I can't remember the last time Embiid missed 2 straight free throws. Yeah, I knew that was coming. He had hit 20 in a row. He hit 20 straight free throws at one point, and then he missed those. Joel Embiid had 1 bucket. Oh, wait, that's the first quarter. Let me go to the fourth quarter. Joel Embiid in the fourth quarter at 9:08 hit a bucket. He hit 2 free throws, 2 more free throws. He had 1 basket in the fourth quarter, Joel Embiid. I mean, I don't want to sit here and bang on a guy who got 37 points, but, I put him in a little bit on the list. I told you, my 3 guys, it's got to be Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, 1 and 1A. Those 2 guys epically let your team down last night. I mean, to some extent, Joel in the fourth quarter, in the second half, what did he score in the third quarter last night? Joel Embiid in the third had a 3 and a 2, and that was it. He had 5 points in the third last night. That's just not good enough, man. So I'm not sitting here saying Joel Embiid lost him the game, but Clark Burns is watching on Facebook. Clark says, Doc is killing me with the all-bench players last night. They look like they couldn't even make a pass, let alone a bucket. Well, that's not fair either. We only remember the most recent stuff. That's why, and it's fine. It's part of what fans do. They remember the most recent. The bench played and gave them a nice run in the first half. They played and gave a nice run in the first half of that game, but they didn't do anything in the second half of that. Thibault hit a couple threes. I think Milton hit a 3. Howard had 8 rebounds. I mean, he was pounding the glass. So they did a nice job in the second half, in the second quarter, I should say, at kind of keeping the Hawks at bay there. In the first half, no one had a problem with the bench playing in the first half. Now, I'm not sitting here sticking up for them. They were terrible in the second half. But now we're complaining about the entire bench, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, Korkmaz. I mean, what are you supposed? You got to play somebody. Someone's got to be out there. I know everybody wants to see B-ball Paul, right? They should have played him last night. Is the next thing I'm going to hear. Boy. Ike is watching on YouTube. Ike says, I keep saying this, any good offense can beat any defense. This is an offensive-driven league. Sixers need a superstar guard to pair with Embiid. It's going to be tough, but that's the move. Well, and there was a conversation that Bob Wischusen was having in today, filling in for Greeny, and I thought it was a really interesting conversation. He's talking about how much money, the Sixers are paying their guys and how much Giannis Antetokounmpo gets paid. Here's the issue. The league has a problem. There's only so many Durants and LeBrons and that level of player. What's there, 4 or 5 of them? And they only go to certain markets. Those guys aren't going to play in certain markets. So the smaller markets, the Oklahoma Cities, the Milwaukees, the Charlottes, the Atlantas, unless they draft the guy, they can't get that guy. So if they have a guy, they have to try to keep him. How do they keep him? They got to give him the max deal. That's the only way they get that guy to stay. Otherwise, he leaves. And then the cycle continues that you're just stuck on the hamster wheel of mediocrity. So the Bucks, like when you are going over, like the Sixers are saying, do we think that Ben Simmons is the guy that can help us win a championship? They might say, no, but we're not going to be able to get another player that does what he does. How else do we get one? We already went through all this losing just to get him. So what are we supposed to do? So you have to pay the guys, and you can't say to Ben Simmons, hey, I'm going to give you less than the max deal, because he's going to laugh at you and walk because someone else is going to give him the max deal that they can. You know what I mean? So if you tell Ben Simmons, I'm not paying you the max, he'll hit the free agent market, and the other team will pay him the max. Now, you might say, well, let them take him. Well, then the Sixers fall right back to where they were, where they're a team that is the 6, 7, 8 seed. And then it starts back over again, that you're stuck in the middle. The problem is you have to pay, like Tobias Harris is not a max player. But if you let him walk, then what's this team look like? If you don't have Tobias Harris on this team all season long, what are you? You're a team that's stuck kind of in the middle. So the rules of the league are allowing them to get paid too much money. That's the problem. There's no middle ground, like, hey, Tobias Harris, this is what kind of player you are. You average 20 points a game, blah, 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 blah. We're going to give you, 4 years and $70 million. And he's going to be like, 4 years, $70 million? Get the heck out of here. So you end up saying, all right, we want you to stay here because we want to be relevant. We want to be the number 1 seed. We want to have a shot to win the championship. We're going to give you a max deal. Not because they think he's a max player. It's because they can't afford to lose him. Same with all these teams. They can't afford to just lose them, because what's the alternative? You're stuck back on the hamster wheel of mediocrity. 609-403-0973. Chris says this is year 4 with the same issues. Ben won't shoot and Embiid is injured in the playoffs. How much longer do we get? Sold hope, or because of NBA trades with superstars never work out in return? Well, this is the problem. I just kind of mentioned this. When you get your players, you're kind of tied to those guys financially. That's what it is. You're kind of tied to the guys financially. And this goes back to the Sixers have had 4 different GMs putting this team together. They are a byproduct of 4 different ideals. Clark, I like this one, though. Let's see how they play with their backs to the wall. Yeah, I'd like to see that. That's something we haven't seen from this team really that much this year. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And the free mobile app. It is powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. You can watch the show live. Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We got a big viewing audience today, and I appreciate you guys. If you are watching on Facebook, hit that like and share button. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Continue to subscribe there. If you're on Twitter, hit the retweet. If you're listening on the radio, send us a text, 609-403-0973. Be frustrated. Agree. Disagree. Not hurt my feelings. I don't agree with you sometimes. You don't have to agree with me sometimes. That's life. We can have different opinions. However, I will say this. Keith Smith on the other side on why the Sixers financially could be in a very difficult spot. That's coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Sports Bash is brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt Kia, Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. Keith Smith is here. He covers the league nationally, sportrack.com. Keith, if you can read our text board today and our social media stream on the video, you would be laughing pretty hard. You can probably only imagine the kind of messages that are coming in today when your team blows a 26-point lead after blowing an 18-point lead the night before. How are you, my man?
I'm probably doing better than the average 76ers fan right now.
I have been on radio stations in markets that don't even have NBA teams that want to talk about how bad that game was last night. But let's get your take on what we saw. 26-point lead. Where did this thing start to fall apart for Philadelphia last night?
I think about midway through the third quarter, I felt like they lost a lot of their aggression offensively. They were playing at a really fast pace to open that game. I had tweeted, I think there was a timeout about 4.5 minutes or so in to the game, and it felt like it had only been about 30 seconds. That's how fast they were getting up and down the floor, and how much was happening in such a short period of time. So it was one of those things where I felt like in the third quarter, Ben Simmons stopped pushing the ball up the floor. They got very, very predictable in their offense. The all bench units or close to all bench units, those are just not working. That's been something that's been a criticism of Doc Rivers going all the way back to his Celtics days. And it just, ultimately defensively, once Atlanta got out of the box, they figured some stuff out in game 4. But once they get out of the box in game 5, they really, it's hard to get those guys back in there because they've got so many good passers, shooters, playmakers, and they were just getting whatever they want. So it was just, I'm not breaking any news here, but it really, snowballed and became an epic disaster.
Yep, you're right about the snowball part of it. It happened, and it just kept going, and you felt it. And give Atlanta credit. They had to make shots to get back in that game, even though Philly was not playing well. Atlanta made shots. Lou Williams was like circa, I don't know, you pick a great Lou Williams year, and that was him last night. He made big shots. Gallinari hit some big shots. But I want to ask you, you mentioned something about Rivers, that this goes back to his Celtic days and he plays. But let me ask you about, do you feel that his hands are somewhat tied with this whole Simmons situation? I mean, he's got a quote-unquote all-star player, right? I mean, he's an all-star player. He's been on that field or court at the all-star game multiple times by his peers. He has a max contract. I mean, he's getting paid over $40 million coming up down the road here. He doesn't make free throws. He came out and said you can't take him out of the game. Are his hands kind of tied with how has to handle Ben Simmons?
I think yes and no. I think they're tied in that he has to play him. There's no other real option to not play him, especially when you're down a guy like Danny Green and those kind of things. And it, even people who don't like Simmons have to see his defensive impact is generally very, very good and has a big effect on the game. But I think the way he utilizes him offensively, there's the running joke that goes around is he's turning him into tall Rondo, which is, just dribble around a whole bunch and find a pass, but don't really look to score and all those things. And that's where, I don't know if it's Simmons. I don't know if it's Doc. I'm not sure who it is, because some of these issues existed under Brett Brown as well, is someone needs to get into him. When you're in the paint, you need to be looking to score. Because he lays these passes off at times where it's, you got down in there. You have Trae Young on you. You have Kevin Huerter on you. You have a small guy on you. You ought to be able to just turn back and score, relatively easy. But his mindset now is he's 100% only looking to pass. I'm not talking about the jump shot. That's over and done with. That's never going to happen. But driving the score should be a thing for a guy his size and skill ability.
Yes, obviously, the lack of aggression. Now, how much of that, Keith, the lack of aggression, has now manifested itself because he's gone from a poor free throw shooter, 60% during the course of the year, to an awful three-point free throw shooter. He's at 32%, and I guess some of that has now carried over to, I can't be aggressive because I can't go to the line. I'm letting my team down at the line, so I can't do – so all of that has to be playing a factor here.
Yeah, 100%. It definitely is. You can see it when he is at the line. It's just a mental thing. It's, some form of mental block that I think he goes up there almost wishing the ball in. It's like he expects to miss and hopes that, maybe he might make one. And that is, impacting his game for sure, because you can tell he's not being aggressive to some extent because I don't think he wants to get fouled. Again, not to make the tall Rondo comparison here that so many others do, but that's something Rajon Rondo went through as well. He stopped driving because he didn't want to get fouled. He would only get so far in there, and then he wasn't going to shoot. It was always going to be a laid-off pass. Became a very, very predictable player for points in his career, and that's something that, Simmons at this stage in his career, so early on, with so many what should be good years left, you may not be able to come back from this. We see when guys get in their head about, I don't want to get fouled, so I'm going to play completely differently, and it just changes his entire upside as a player.
You mentioned Rondo, and that is obviously a good one. They won a championship with Rondo. So can you win with this Ben Simmons?
No, because the Rondo that the Celtics won a championship with was a brash second-year guard who was, I don't care that KG is here. I don't care Paul Pierce is here. I don't care about Ray Allen. I'm the one who's got the ball. I'm going to run this thing. And he was a very different player at that point in his career. And then, that the not wanting to get fouled, avoiding contact, never looking to score, that came later in his Celtics tenure. And some of it came after a couple injuries, but a lot of it was, when teams are like, all right, this guy's never going to shoot from the outside, except, when he's wide open, we need to play off him. So that's the difference. Rondo came in with the attitude of, hey, I'll run this thing. And he still remained an extremely aggressive driver for passes, whereas Simmons, I think, is afraid to even get anywhere close, thinking, all right, they're going to follow me no matter what. And when you've got a guy of his ability who's essentially a 6'10" entry passer on the wing, that's just completely useless. So you're not going to win with him playing like this. There's no chance.
Talking with Keith Smith, Spot Rack, and we'll get to something about Joel Embiid that's going to be interesting down the road. Obviously, Tobias Harris. I mean, if Ben Simmons is on the list at the top, Harris has to be 1A. And you almost say, look, Simmons, 4 of 14 at the line, 1,000% unacceptable, but he scored 8. He averages 13. Harris scored 4. He averages 21. He was 17 off last night. What's a bigger impact of what happened in that game last night? The lack of Simmons or the lack of Harris?
Yeah, I think they've learned how to work around Simmons. Harris not being there, they can't win without him scoring and carrying a pretty heavy offensive load. You need him to be very good. And the challenge with Harris is this was a throwback to Tobias Harris of old, where the running comment was, you can be a 20-point per game scorer if you score 30 one night and 10 the next. That averages out to 20, and there you are. And that's what it felt like. It felt like he had very little impact. And I remember games here in Orlando as he was kind of coming into his own, where Tobias Harris would be out there and you would struggle to even notice that he was on the court. And that's kind of what happened. They can't have things like that. And again, this comes back to, you can put it somewhat on the player, but if you're Doc Rivers, you need to be drawing up sets. You need to be putting him in position where, hey, we're going to get you the ball. We're going to get you going. Because, Embiid's the guy who, everything runs through. He's your main weapon. But Harris has to be a guy who you've got to get touches for, get him good looks, get him set up to get him going. And it just never happened last night.
Yeah, I know throughout the course of this regular season, we felt that Harris went from a good player to a very good player. It felt like we were past all that, and you saw moments in the Washington series, but last night was inexcusable. I mean, 4 points, 117 told me everything I needed to know late in that game. He's got a drive to the baseline, Keith, and he passed off to Embiid. They triple Embiid. Embiid throws it back to him, and he almost crapped himself. I mean, he didn't want no part of that shot late in the game, and that was very concerning about, okay, even if they pick up a win or you now kind of know that Harris is not the guy that you need him to be. That's what I think you found out last night.
Yeah, and that's where it becomes very difficult. This team is essentially built around 3 players on max contracts. I know Harris isn't quite there, but for all intents and purposes, he is. So though him, Simmons, and Embiid delivering on his max contract without question. There's not much more you can ask him. I know he's poor in Game 4, but clearly he's soldiering through some stuff right now. But Simmons, on a max contract, that starts to look questionable. Harris's deal, I think we even talked about it at the time. It was, felt a little questionable. And after games like last week, that's where you really look at and say, boy, we've got a lot of years left at $30+ million for the guy. How do you make that work? And that's a major challenge.
Speaking of challenges, I want to bring up Embiid too. It's hard to bust on a guy who scored 37, but are there nights where if you are the best player on the best team, are there nights when the other guys don't have it that you say 37's not good enough, I need 45? I mean, he scored, I think, 5 points in the third and had a bucket in the fourth. Do you look at Embiid and say, hey, I get it, you're on one leg, but did they need more from Embiid last night?
They needed more, but I don't know that you can ask more. It's hard for a big man. This is why a lot of teams have migrated away from building their teams around a dominant big. Nikola Jokic is a different story because he handles the ball so much and does so many things. But with Joel Embiid, he's not going to bring the ball up and get his own shot. He's not going to create his own look in the half court. He's still a dependent player. You've got to, somebody's got to set him up to some degree. And that's why it's so hard on a big man because, anybody else, a wing or a guard, they can run out and take a handoff, near the half court line and go and create something. Embiid's not going to do that. And that's not a criticism. That's just not who he is as a player. So when you're so heavily dependent on, we got to get in, like you referenced that one play where, they triple teamed him. Well, that's easier to do on a big because he's in and around the basket area than it is on anybody else.
All right, Keith, this series is going back to Atlanta. The Sixers have dominated most quarters. There's been a handful of quarters that the Hawks have won, and that has made this a 3-2 Hawks series. So after watching what you've seen, especially the last 2 games where the Sixers have had an 18 and a 26-point lead, is it far-fetched to think they can go to Atlanta, get one, and bring it back to Philly? And if they do they lose 3 games in their own building after losing 7 all? They're one of the best home teams in basketball over the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's not far-fetched at all. I mean, we've seen what they can do, when they're playing well. And there's a sense of, they just need to finish, games. I don't know that they really went into coast mode, but they did start playing a little bit differently, and they've got to figure that out. So there's definitely no thought of, well, this is definitely over. There's no way they can win. I think Atlanta's now favored, but that's because they're at home. You generally expect a lower seed, if they're up 3-2, will close it out in 6. But this playoffs has taught me every time I think I know something, I really don't know anything, the way these series are going so far.
Yeah, there is a lot there. Tell the people, Keith, about Joel Embiid hitting second-team All-NBA and the ramifications of that.
Yeah, so what this does now for Joel Embiid is that qualifies him to sign the designated veteran extension. Think of what Giannis Antetokounmpo just did with the Milwaukee Bucks. So he is now eligible to tack 4 more years onto his contract following this year. So this would be an off-season thing. He's got 2 more years left on that max extension he signed. And this jumps him, they are eligible to jump all the way up to the 35% max, which is the highest tier max you can sign. He'd still be a couple years out from that under normal circumstances, but because he made All-NBA again, he's now qualified to sign that full max extension, or not full max, but close. He can sign for 4 years because you can't have more than a 6 years under contract. So I would expect that would be a definite conversation that they're going to approach. Look at that. I don't know. A lot of people have said, well, of course it's going all the way to the 35% max. And yes, that's what Embiid and his representatives will ask for. But I'm not entirely sure that that's what we see. I think they may ultimately in the end agree to something kind of in between that, which would protect the team. They were very creative the way they put together his last contract, where they protected themselves against injuries and those kind of things. And ultimately for Embiid, it's a little bit of, hey, I'm going to bet on myself, which clearly worked out. He's earned every penny that, he is owed now. So that though I expect there to be, some form of back and forth on that, but he is in line where Philadelphia wants to keep him. They can offer that, designated extension and keep him in and make him a very, very, a very richer man, I guess, than he is already.
Keith Smith, Spot Rack, and of course he's got a good piece on that whole Embiid thing at Keith Smith NBA. If the Sixers lose this series, it would be a epic disappointment. Does Daryl Morey start to think about splitting this team up?
I think to some extent, I have a feeling that if they lose, the Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid pairing gets heavily looked at this summer. And I don't think it's Embiid who goes. I think they've proven, hey, we can build some stuff around this guy. I think they will seek to build an offense where it is 4 shooters rather around Embiid at all times. And I think that's going to ultimately mean Simmons probably goes. We kind of saw the writing on the wall a little bit with this when Morey was hired, that he's not married to the small ball, but I think he is married to shooting on the floor. And I think, a non-shooter being out there like Simmons, and we've talked about this so many times, it's not that he can't shoot, it's that he won't shoot. This was always the issue when they had TJ McConnell and they would ever play Simmons and McConnell together. You had two guys who had no interest in ever shooting the ball unless it was a wide open layup. And that bogged the offense down and caused a problem. I think this has also been a, clear wake up call for Daryl Morey that he's got to build out a bench that's a little bit better. And at some point, I expect there to be a conversation with Doc Rivers about, hey, we can't have these moments in games where you're going to a full bench unit at times. We've got to stagger our stars in there. So I think you're definitely going to see some changes come if they fall to Atlanta, and I think they might be pretty big ones.
All right. On that path, Keith, if Ben Simmons were to get traded, what's his value? Are teams lining up to get him?
Yeah, it's a really, really difficult question to peg. I've asked a lot of people around the league, and you have people who love his game because they love the idea of a 6'10" point guard, an elite defender. Arguably, he is the game's most versatile defensive player. We hear that the term all the time, can defend 1 through 5, but it's usually, they can hold their own a little bit on a switch against the point guard or a center, where Simmons is truly a guy who can, there's not a player in the league he can't, at least credibly defend. He's not going to shut everybody down because some guys are simply too good. But the question of his value really comes in. There are teams I know that have little to no interest. One, because they just can't see the idea of paying $30+ million a year to a player who won't shoot the ball and is, going to top out at most at, 12 to 15 points per game. And then in the playoffs, maybe, less than 10 point per game player. That is the worry that comes around the league. So it's not that he's to the point where he's a bad contract and you're having to attach assets to get off it or anything, but it's definitely the point where maybe a year or two ago, you might have been able to spin him and get back a major player. We're seeing now why Houston, even if you take out that we got to make Daryl Morey pay factor, they wanted more than just Simmons and picks in the trade, because I think Houston looked at it and said, yeah, he's pretty good, but we're not going to be able to build a championship roster around him. Maybe he can be a piece of one, but as a key player, probably not going forward.
All right, Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Tonight, it's Nets and Bucks. And, I mean, obviously, as you said, when you think you know something, you don't know. And then Harden comes back. He plays 40 minutes. And if I say Harden's going to play, but he's going to score less than 10 points, they lose that game, right? How do they play the game tonight? What do you see in Milwaukee tonight?
Yeah, you hope if you're the Nets, you're not going to get another game like what Kevin Durant gave you. I mean, that's just, it's silly if anybody's expecting that. And now watch, he'll come out and be even better. But I think it's, more likely you see him, slide back some. Now, you hope that's made up by James Harden feeling better. trusting in things a little bit more. We know anytime a player comes back from an injury, there's a little bit of hesitation to really cut loose and go. So maybe he's more ready to go. So that part, you're hoping that'll be your offset. You'll be right there. But if Milwaukee had just continued to play in Game 5 the way they had been playing offense, getting the ball moving, doing all those things, it would not have mattered what the Nets did scoring-wise and all the points Durant scored. It fell apart for Milwaukee when an ISO ball and Giannis started settling for three-pointers and fall-away jumpers. Drew Holiday kind of lost his mind for a little bit in there where it was, he was trying to play too much in individual game and those kind of things. Once they stopped running offense, it became very easy for the Nets to defend them because they had to defend one guy in one action, and off they went. So the Bucks are not. It's not great to be down in the series, to be sure, but they're at home. They should, feel like, hey, if we just play the way we played, we're gonna tie this thing up. We're going to a Game 7. But they've got to figure it out. They cannot play offense the way they did down the stretch in Game 5, or they're going to lose, and this series will be over.
All right, Keith Smith, and then of course the Clippers. They win last night without Kawhi, but if he's not there, I guess we don't believe that they can win the whole thing. Maybe they have surprised us here. So we got a lot of surprises in this NBA. Probably as wide open a season that we can ever remember. And, of course, the playoffs continue tonight here on 97.3 ESPN with that Nets and Bucks game. Tomorrow night, we've got Sixers-Hawks, game number 6. Let me go back to that and get your thought on that. Do you believe that Doc Rivers and the Sixers find a way to win that game in Atlanta?
I do, and that may be me being hopeful because I'm kind of looking at the math and the number of games we could have left. I'm starting to get a little sad that there's so few. But it is, I do think that they can get that win. It's going to be tough, though. That's going to be a raucous crowd there in Atlanta. We know that they're going to be, thrilled to have their guys. And that Hawks team, they're playing with so much confidence and swagger. They might hit them and hit them early. The challenge for Philadelphia is going to be, you can't fall behind big early in the game because it might be over if that happens. And then if you are in it or you get up, you just got to keep playing. Stick with what works. You can't try and slow things down and bleed clock and those kind of things. But it's really a toss-up. I think they can win. Will they? I don't know that I expect that just because the Hawks are at home, but I think they can.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like I go back to last night and wonder, do you do what Steve Nash did and just say, guys, I need you to play all 48. And if, we lose, all right, but you get that win and then you get 2 shots to win instead of now needing to win twice. And that all bench lineup. But to be fair, he goes to the all bench lineup who didn't play well, but his starters weren't giving him anything either.
Yeah, that's the tough part. As I said, what do you do? Do you take Ben Simmons out and put in, a bench guy who's not, playing all that well? It's, and the one thing that I do think is kind of scary for Philadelphia, Tobias Harris will be better. I don't think he'll, have another game as poor, but you're probably not getting another game of Steph Curry shooting the ball
right
the way he did. And that, so those things start to balance out. And that's what's tough, where if you look on the other side of the court, nobody from Atlanta really kind of played out of their mind, and nobody really played, very poorly. They all kind of did their thing. It took them a while to get there, but they did. So that's what, and those are the things that I think make it kind of tough.
You know what's wild, Keith? The Sixers shot 43% from 3-point range and to 34 and lost the game. I mean, you don't see that very often. Atlanta only made 9 threes. And I said, game 1 they made 23s. Okay, they need 23s to beat you. They have now won 2 games where they have shot below their average and beaten you. And this is on a night where Philly shot 43% from 3-point range. It's almost like you said you're doing the math. Mathematically, how do you lose that game?
Yeah, that's very, very true. And I think the other thing, too, is I want to say it was Tom Haberstroh put this out there. Only Embiid and Curry were the only 2 players to make a shot in the second half for Philadelphia. That I've never seen anything like that before in my life. And Curry was playing very well, and Embiid had a strong game. So this wasn't prime Michael Jordan. Everybody else get out of his way, make sure he takes every shot possible. There were plenty of guys who got off attempts, but it really is, as I look at it, there were so many oddities in that game where you kind of say, how did you lose? And on the flip side, you kind of look at some of the things you're like, how were you even in it to begin with? How did you even get to that point? So this is, as you said, it's wide open this season. And this is the weirdest playoffs where I can remember. Maybe some of it, guys are tired, some of the variants with injuries and those kind of things. But this has been a playoffs where, again, every time I think I have something figured out and I know what I'm talking about, it gets turned on its head.
At Keith Smith, NBA, and of course, these playoffs have been wild, a lot of injuries, breakdowns, and if the Sixers' path this year, they can't get through this one, you got to wonder what's next for this team. We'll find out Friday night, and Keith will be back to break it down and the NBA playoffs next week. All right, pal, take care.
Thank you, and enjoy the playoffs as best you can, I guess.
Thanks a bunch, man. Keith Smith here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. I like a guy who's venting away on the text board, just going, and he says, sorry for the venting. It's just so frustrating to watch. Let it out, man. That's what I'm here for. We don't have to agree. It's not like, hey, you have to agree with me. I get it. Not everybody thinks the way that I do, which is way okay. And I know people out there going, you're damn right I don't agree with you. I definitely think a lot different than people out there. I'm well aware of that. But this is what I'm here for. This is what the show's for. It's for you guys as great sports fans to vent and let it out, and we can talk about it and kind of go around in circles sometimes. He says, hey, Mike, you've been killing me all year for throwing shade at Ben and telling you that he's not a player that can lead you to a championship. You repeatedly told me otherwise. I don't know that Ben can lead you to a championship, but my point is he's definitely a person who can be on the team that wins the championship because of the ancillary things that he does. The problem is the fans don't appreciate the ancillary things. And then when you have a night like last night, it manifests into you got to get rid of him. No, you heard what Keith Smith said. Josh, we got to get that comment. He said they have learned how to work around Ben Simmons, but they can't win without Harris. That wasn't me who said that. That was what Keith said. They've learned how to work around Ben Simmons. So, yeah, they're not surprised that Ben Simmons had the game he had last night. For some reason, you're still surprised by it, but they're not. What they're surprised by is Tobias Harris put up a big old crap burger. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. You want more numbers from the epic meltdown last night? I know you do, and I got them next. right, ticket at Sports Bashes Live Monday through Friday, 2 to 6, although someone says that I owe him an apology and I should be suspended and take the rest of the week off. I will take the rest of the week off. I will take the full week off. What's that? He says Mike Gill owes us all an apology, and he should be suspended from work for a week for telling us Ben Simmons was good. He is good. Not last night. But overall, yes, he's very good. He lacks a skill that many people have that mostly we judge people on, but he also has skills that many lack that people just don't care about. Like last night, Seth Curry scored 39 points in the game, right? 36, I'm sorry. He got torched on defense, but nobody cares. Nobody cares that Seth Curry got absolutely lambasted and undressed defensively last night. Nobody cares because he scored 36 points. It's a microcosm of how fans think, and that's okay. But that's why I don't sit here and blindly just say, you know what? You're right. Ben Simmons isn't a good player because he doesn't score. One guy scored 36. He also gave up 36 last night. For God's sake, Seth Curry got undressed defensively last night. They went at him every single time down the court. Lou Williams said, hey, where's Seth Curry? Oh, he's right here. Give me the ball. So we only judge people based on what they do on the offensive end of the floor. The Sixers without Ben Simmons have been an awful basketball team. When he doesn't play, they don't win. What were they, 0-4 for that stretch without him? They're just not very good when he doesn't play. But he's not for everyone, and it's totally understandable. But that said, I will suspend myself from a week, and I'll go to the beach and hang out. I have no problem with that. Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN. Yeah, I mean, look, Curry had a great game last night, right? Curry was awesome offensively. I can't rip Curry. He scored 36. He also was terrible defensively last night. He was horrible. But we only care about what you do offensively. Now, that being said, I don't think Simmons was very good defensively last night, which is rare. But I don't think Simmons played well defensively last night. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. When we come back, football at 4. Adam Kaplan answers this next.
Oh.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It dropped this morning. The brand new one is out. I think the guys are going to be doing a live Ask ITB tonight as well with Jeff Mosher and this man, the third member of the NWO. He is Adam Kaplan, and he joins us here on Football at 4 on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Well, in the pantheon of Philadelphia losses, the Eagles have given us a lot. But that Sixer one almost has to be ahead of what? The Tampa loss, the Carolina loss.
Mike, I would, in my lifetime, I don't know of a greater loss in terms of a team, of one of the Philadelphia sports team having a insurmountable lead. It would probably be like having a 3-touchdown lead head into the fourth quarter for an NFL team. There's simply no way you could lose that. You could. I mean, when they're up 26 with 7 and change in the third quarter, I'm thinking there's no way. And then, okay, so the lead gets down to 8 with 3.5 minutes left. I'm like, well, there's just no way they're going to lose this lead. And then once they did, you could see they were dejected. It was over because they couldn't get out of it. It sunk in at how they've choked.
Yeah.
And it just it's very disheartening. Now, I know everyone's writing them off for tomorrow night. Look, they've already won in Atlanta. We're gonna learn a lot. Now, what I didn't realize is that I knew about Doc Rivers last year, his Clippers team choking a 3-1 lead, but he's had some issues with blowing leads in playoff series. In his career,
I think he's done it 3 times now.
Yeah, at least. So that's troubling. That's definitely disappointing, and that's on Doc. Doc's a part of this. There's no question.
They all play a role. I thought last night was a team role in that game. So, all right, let's look at Football at 4 here. You guys had a good Inside the Birds podcast today. A lot of juicy stuff in there to kind of look at. Let's go back to what happened earlier this week and kind of talk about what this means, because Nick Mullins is here. You talked about that last week right here on Football at 4. You mentioned Sean Mannon and Nick Mullins. Mullins gets signed. So now there's 3 guys in that room. What does this mean for the quarterback position? Is Mullins here as a camp guy? Is he in competition? That's the theme of the camp. So what do we know about what Mullins brings?
All right, Mike. So that's the question. So yeah, we dropped the news last Thursday that the guy that they wanted was Mullins of the two, of he and Sean Mannion. They preferred Mullins just because of the accuracy. Now I know he's turned the ball over a little bit too much, but in terms of completion rate, pretty good. He doesn't have a very strong arm. He's a decent athlete, not a great athlete. He can get out of his own way. I like the fact that I know the Eagles did that Kyle Shanahan developed him as an undrafted free agent. So, look, he was a restricted free agent. The Niners didn't tender him, which means they didn't want him back. And he could have waited till training camp. He didn't. The Eagles could have waited till training camp. They didn't. They want to get that third quarterback for training camp for a guy that they liked. And they targeted this guy, and they got him. Now, he's part of this group. Remember, they signed 3 players now. Mullins is the last one. Richard Rodgers is back technically for a 4th time if you look at the contracts. He's back, and Michael Walker, who was a long shot to make the team, but Dave Caldwell, the GM of the former GM of the Jaguars, who Mosher pointed out was a good point, had him last year in Jacksonville, so he knows the player. Maybe he suggested him. Who knows? Caldwell's a personnel executive, more of a consultant for the Eagles. But I don't think, Mike, they would keep him for the fall. Now, he'll be in training camp, and he's sort of like a camp arm because you can't go to training camp with two players. And by the way, we're going to have preseason this year. The Eagles will have 3 preseason games, so you have to have a third quarterback, and that's what he's there for. Now, the question is, because we believe we're going to be operating on last year's rules, if they do waive him, because he's still not vested, he'd have to be waived first. Do we think that maybe they would bring him to the practice squad? Because remember now, there's no restrictions on how many years you have to have vested to be on a practice squad because we're still under last year's rules. So one way or the other, I think they might want to bring him back in the fall, but we have to get there first.
Yeah, I know that he's a guy who has starting experience. We talked about that. You also mentioned last week, West Coast. That was a big reason why they liked him. Yeah. And obviously, I liked it and I talked about this with Jeff on Monday, which was it helps the back end of the receivers, too, that they're not getting passes thrown from some jamoke that comes in, air mount them. They're getting passes from a guy who has started. That should help the back end development to John Hightower and Quez Watkins and that group of guys.
That's a great point because, Mike, I've noticed this in OTAs, over the years. When the veterans aren't in, it's just generally rookies and first and second year players. And the quarterbacks that are there, if the veterans are not there, are generally, other than the first round pick, are pretty bad. And that speaks to your point. Sometimes it's hard to evaluate these receivers if the balls are at their ankle or they're just sailing wide. So yeah, Mullins is a guy who's got accuracy. Just, for the record, does not have a very strong arm. He's more of a timing and rhythm West Coast offense. And Jeff and I have talked about this on Inside the Berth for, at least 3 months now. The type of offense that we've heard they're going to run, the type of throws are more West Coast based, timing and get out of your hands quickly and let the receivers and tight ends run after the catch.
So that's something. Will Mullins be a part of this 53-man roster? I guess that's part of this whole competition.
Yeah.
We will find out on July 27th when Eagles training camp begins. All right. The biggest, issue going forward. I did radio in Dallas today, and that's what they asked. What's the biggest problem for the Eagles? They said, can either one of you guys play corner? Because right now the competition at that spot, I don't even know if it's exciting or not because you got Darius Slay, and then that's it. But that will provide probably the biggest story into camp other than the tackle spot on the offensive side of the ball.
There are so many backup jobs open. Jeff and I were talking about this morning. We kind of joke. We're doing a training camp preview show for both sides of the football. We said that might be a 3-hour show because there's so many jobs open. But yeah, look, at outside corner, you got Slay. We know he's starting. The other side, it's right now, if they're going to add at least one veteran. As we said on the show this morning, they really need to add two. But they're going to add one at some point, whether it's July 27th. That's not the first day that they start training camp. That's the day they have to report. They probably won't practice for a couple of days after that. But McPherson right now is the fourth rounder compete for that job. Craig James should. Jaquette, I believe that's the way he pronounced his last name. Josiah Scott, they're bringing in. We're told that they're going to start him on the outside first because they know he could play slot. Those are really the guys who could be competing for it. The slot guys are Avonte Maddox, who also could play on the outside, Craig James, who could also play on the outside, and Josiah Scott, who could play on the outside. So here's what we do know. They do not need any more slot corners. They got too many of them. They need, Mike, anyone to compete on the outside. Look, if they could just, we mentioned 4 players on the show this morning, some guys that we think that potentially could come available by maybe the end of training camp or the preseason, where there's so much depth on some of these teams at corner where these guys might become available. So check that out on our show. But look, and you're right. Look, it's not great. It's not great talent they have there. McPherson, I know the Eagles are very high on. They thought he did a nice job in the limited work that he got. Because remember, there were no 7-on-7 and no 11-on-11. So you really can't tell 1-on-1s all that much until they're really having competition in training camp. So I wouldn't go crazy with anything that happens in the offseason, particularly with this team, because they're not really doing a whole lot. But it's by far the worst position on the team. It's not close. If you think receiver is not good, at least they have a ton of upside.
Yeah.
Other than Slay, what do you really have?
You've got guys drafted in the first round. You've got a second-round pick who's been a bust so far, but you've got at least guys who have shown flashes. Let me ask you this. Is there a guy, other than McPherson, who they drafted, that they are higher on that maybe we don't know about, or that like they say secretly, you know what, this guy's better than people are giving? Like, of that group, is there someone in there that they are hoping wins that job?
Well, I can only go back. There isn't one right now, but I could tell you that last summer, no one was talking about Craig James. So we found out, I don't know, 2 weeks before the team, because we were trying to do our 53. Not only were we hearing he was going to make the team, he was one of their top 4 corners, and Pat probably had, other than Slay, the best training camp of any corner. And I was kind of surprised by that. It wasn't just special teams. He actually had a very good training camp. And once you know it, he made the team. And yeah, right now, what's going to happen is someone's going to surprise. Now, Braylon Arnold could play probably safety too, but he's a long shot to make it. Lavert Hill, Shaquille Taylor, and Nate Meters are there only because of the experience that they had in the scheme that they're going to run, and they know the defense coordinator, Gannon. Now, safety, Mike. Safety is one which is going to be fun because that, I think, has a little bit more definition of what we think we're going to get.
Yeah, you got Rodney McLeod, who obviously has the knee injury. You got Anthony Harris, who you signed, who's a veteran player who has had a really good year, and then he kind of had a year that was just okay. Kevon Wallace, drafted him last year, didn't get a really chance to see him. Seemingly, and you probably would know more about this, they like Marcus Epps, and then you've got Andrew Adams, who was a special teamer who played in Tampa, and obviously Elijah Riley is a young player as well. So the safety position, as you said, if McLeod and Harris are together and stay healthy, it seems that they're okay there.
Yeah, so we don't expect McLeod to be practicing in training camp at all, really. Maybe by the end of August, he's on the field doing some sort of drills. So we expect him to start training camp on active PUP because he's coming back from ACL reconstruction. Because the way it works is, Mike, once training camp starts, you cannot put him on PUP. You can't put him on and take him off until the start of the regular season. But if you don't put him on PUP to start training camp, he can't go on there for the regular season. So we're fully expecting him to start it there, but he could come off at any time. Yeah, Harris is starting, obviously. Kayvon Wallace and Epps are competing for that third safety job. They probably will say Adams is too. Technically, he probably is, but he's more of a force safety and a special teamer. So that's kind of, we have a little bit clearer picture of safety in a corner. We don't have a clear picture. That thing is wide open right now.
Yeah, it sure is. And obviously, the safety spot you mentioned, you don't know about McLeod being ready. Now, do they think he'll be ready for the start of the season?
They're optimistic, but they don't know yet. They're not going to know until a while because he's still rehabbing it. That's the problem because of the time when he got his surgery. It puts him right up to hugging up to the start of the season. And look, it's same thing for the kid, the lineman that they signed formerly of the Colts, who tore his Achilles. They're optimistic they'll be ready very early in the season, but they don't know that because that Achilles injuries are tough to come back from. So look, it's they got a couple guys that they got to see what's going to happen, but they got some other guys coming back from surgeries. Zach Ertz, obviously, from his ankle surgery. We'll see if he's on the football team. He still is right now. Fulgham, we first reported that he had ankle surgery. He's good to go. We know about Lane Johnson. He's doing great. He'll be ready for training camp. He did quite a bit in this offseason. So it's bad to say this with the surgeries. From what we've been hearing, more often than not, they're all going to be ready, or not all, but mostly are going to be ready for the season.
Hey, what if Darius Slay ended up getting hurt? How much of an issue would that be?
Oh boy. This is why we suggested they can't just go in adding one corner. They got to add two. Because depth, Mike, has nothing to do with how many players you have on the roster at a position. I jokingly said they could have 50 players at corner. They don't have a starting corner opposite Slay. You need to have guys. The way coaches will explain to me is this. You need to have players that you feel confident could go in the game and play and hold themselves up. So you only need like 5 corners on defense. You don't need 7. You don't need 6 to start a season, but you got to feel good about all of them. And right now they don't have a number 2 corner. They don't even have a number 3 right now because they don't know about McPherson yet because he hasn't had a real practice yet. Craig James is probably better as a backup slot and a 4th corner. Jaquette is a total developmental project who would be better on a practice squad. The other guys are just kind of roster filler, and we'll see. So again, it's a total mystery at this cornerback position. It's not what you really want, Mike, at one of the top positions on a football team.
What about trade possibilities? It seems like there are still some of that buzz out there. Is there anything that Howie Roseman can do down that road?
Not that we've been hearing. Like the kid that they got from the Jaguars. What happened is the Jaguars, as I understand it, from a size standpoint, Josiah Scott was not what they wanted at 5'9", just over 5'9" and a quarter. Didn't have the length that they wanted at corner. And the Eagles, as Mosher said, he reported this like 3 months ago. He had heard that the Gannon and the coaches didn't really have a size requirement. So Scott is a guy the Eagles had a draftable grade on, we're told, last year, and we'll see what he can do. I mean, he's a pretty high character kid. They've had a good relationship with the agent over the years, as I understand it. One thing that the Eagles do a really good job of. If you notice, Mike, they rarely have guys who don't have high character in terms of off the field stuff. It's one thing we rarely talk about, but you don't see a lot of other players over the years on the police blotter. You just don't. They generally, not always, but generally have pretty high character guys.
All right, Adam Kaplan, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast. And then let's go back to safety real quick, because if McLeod's not ready, is Wallace a guy that they view as a starter? Do they look at him as a future starter or a guy that would start opposite Harris, or do they need to go out and maybe sign someone else there?
Yeah, so Mike, last year, Wallace did next to nothing. There were a lot of fans of our show were saying, oh, man, he's going to play lots this year. We kept saying he's not ready. And that showed by the amount of snaps he got. I mean, you mentioned Marcus Epps earlier. Wallace, we're told, actually had a good spring. Now, again, they didn't do any team drills, so we can't definitely say that he's on schedule, because we won't know until they actually have real practices in training camp. But I know that they're happy with his progress so far this offseason. And you mentioned Epps, who's a guy that knows the defense, so that really helps him over Wallace. But Wallace was drafted in the 4th round. He's probably a better football player, but Epps has got a little bit more experience. And the good thing with Epps is here now, this is technically his 3rd season with the football team.
Yeah, I know that will be something interesting there, as because Wallace was a draft pick, and sometimes you're hoping for that jump in year number 2. I do want to real quick. Yesterday with Jeff on the Q&A show, they were talking about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, saying that he might be best served in the slot. Do the Eagles believe that as well?
They've tried it, Mike. You don't have to be fast to play in the slot. You have to be able to get open within a short area. Vaughn knows that better than anyone. He was the Sultan of the slot. I know that, I know talking to the Bears over the years, they think Allen Robinson is incredible in the slot. He does not have long speed, but he has this ability to get open in a short area. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, if he's going to make it, and to me, he's more of a long shot to make the football team, just based on the reality of how disappointing he's been in the first 2 seasons. But Nick Sirianni is a guy that said he likes. He was on record months ago talking about Arcega-Whiteside. He liked the player. We'll see. It gives him the fact that he's done it a little bit does help him show that he could play different positions, but he hasn't shown, Mike, that he could play any position well yet. And that's the problem with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside.
A lot of competition. You mentioned it, the fact that there's not a standout, but at least they have, 2 first-round picks. Arcega-Whiteside at least adds some intrigue by working with the new staff. That's the only reason why I guess we're giving him another shot. Is because
again, with Nick Sirianni, who's a receiver guy, played receiver in college.
Yeah.
Patullo, his right-hand man, is a guy that's played receivers, knows the position. Aaron Moorhead. I mean, between the 3 of them, I've said this before. I threw this line out 4 months ago, and I keep using it because it makes me laugh. If these guys can't get these guys up to speed at receiver, forget it. And the front office completely missed. Yep,
absolutely. Totally agree with that. I think, and again, that's the only reason I think I'm willing to give Arcega-Whiteside another shot is, okay, maybe the previous coaching staff didn't develop him, didn't get the best out of it. You mentioned before that was one of the weaknesses of Peterson, of not getting the most out of the younger players. All right, I'll buy that. Let me see what a coaching staff that focuses on that position can get out of him. If nothing, then he's done.
I agree. And again, it's a situation right now with this coaching staff. I strongly believe player development will be more important. Not that the other staff ignored it, but let's be honest, Mike, there was a real lack of player development with his former staff, particularly the last couple of years. I would say 19 and 20. I can't put my finger on it, but there was a lack of player development. Now, we can blame the front office all we want about, hey, they might have missed on this player or that player, but as you said, and I think it's a fair point, let's see what this staff can do with these players.
All right, Adam Kaplan at Kaplan NFL. You guys are going live tonight. What time?
Yeah, 9 o'clock, and then 9 to 9:45. Get your questions in on our Facebook board, Inside the Birds. We have a group there. And also tonight from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern, I'm doing my Twitch chat. I'll probably go to 8:50, 8:45, but tons of Eagle fans in there. It's actually pretty cool. Bear fans, Buck fans. We're building something kind of cool there.
Adam Kaplan will be back next week for another edition of Football at 4, and he, like all guests, right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Adam, take care, bud.
Guys, thank you.
All right, there he goes. And, of course, you can check out the Inside the Birds podcast weekday morning, Mondays and Thursday mornings, I should say, at 6 a.m. That's when they drop the new podcast. It's out today. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. When we come back, things that happened on June 17th. You know what happened on June 16th? This will come up in a future edition. The Sixers blew a 26-point lead at home. We'll save that for next year, though. What happened on the 17th? Do you remember? Those things are coming up next. Plus, at 4:40 today, Mark Jackson will join us. He said something pretty strong last night on Sixers Postgame Live, which for some reason, is anybody else not able to get NBC Sports Plus on YouTube TV? It keeps telling me that I don't have internet connection. Yet every other channel on YouTube TV works except for that one, and it doesn't work on my television, it doesn't work on my phone, and it doesn't work on my laptop, the app. Just that channel. Just NBC Sports Philadelphia. Bizarre. But Mark Jackson will join me at 4:40. Stick around. All right, let's check out what happened on this day. June the 17th. Were there any epic meltdowns on June 17th? Because there was one on the 16th. That's for sure. What an awful game last night. Just horrible. Horrible to watch the whole thing kind of unfold right before your very eyes. Josh Henning's my producer. Where were you watching that disaster last night?
I watched the first half here and the second half at the gym.
Did it, knock you off your routine?
It did. I was so ticked off when they were starting to blow that lead. I was losing track of what I was doing at the gym. I couldn't believe what I was watching.
How could you? Well, somebody asked me, I was on a station today, and the guy said, is this something that happened a lot? Did they blow a lot of leads? And I said, during the Brett Brown era, we used to say all the time, they would get big leads and then lose them. And then this year, how many times did you hear, oh, they would have lost that game this year?
If Brett Brown was there.
Last year, right. So they lost. So this year it hasn't been as big of an issue.
Right.
But with this group, it has been.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Kind of like down that road. They've lost big leads with this group before, but it didn't happen as much this year.
This was, if you include the Atlanta game, which I do, that's now 2 straight games where you blew a lead.
Well, why wouldn't you include that?
Well, some people are trying to make them like a different game.
What, last game 4?
4, yeah.
You have to include that game. It was an 18-point lead.
I agree with you, but I feel like some people online are trying to make a difference between them for some dumb reason.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I feel like everybody's just absolutely taking every shot they can to lambaste everybody. This is the I want to get you-know-who out of here if I can. These are the moments that you take advantage
Fill in
of.
the blank person.
Well, right now, if you look at the poll question, at 973 ESPN. By the way, Rick Carlisle has stepped down.
Yeah. They parted ways.
Parted ways, right. He didn't get fired. He parted ways.
By the way, I'm with you on that. I don't understand that either. What happened to getting fired? Why are we all just parting ways, separating?
I will not part ways. I will be fired. That's how it will happen. Either that or I would leave. There's not mutual parting of ways. You get fired. That's what happens.
I don't understand this mutual parting of ways. How does that work?
Right now, the poll question's up. After the epic meltdown, who's bothering you most today? Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, or Doc Rivers? It's a runaway, but the runaway has shortened a little bit. It's 62% is now the leader. It was around 66% earlier. And then 21 and then 16. Go vote at 973 ESPN. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
On this day, 1954, Rocky Marciano defends his heavyweight title with a 15-round unanimous decision over Ezzard Charles at Yankee Stadium. He was the only fighter to ever go all 15 with Rock. People don't really remember. I certainly don't. But his name doesn't get brought up enough. But the state of the heavyweight division, you go back and watch some of those heavyweights.
I would say that there's 3 heavyweights for the Ali era that have to be brought up in the conversation, and that's Rocky Marciano, Joe Louis, and Jack Johnson. Outside of those 3, you can pretty much forget anything for the Ali era.
But I'm saying Marciano was kind of the first.
Well, Marciano was the guy.
First heavyweight star.
He was the first accepted heavyweight star.
Fair.
Joe Louis and Jack Johnson were stars, but they were also hated for a lot of reasons.
94, NBC interrupts its coverage of Game 5 of the NBA Finals to cover the Los Angeles Police Department pursuit of O.J. Simpson in a white Ford Bronco on the L.A. freeway. Simpson was subsequently arrested for the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and Rod Goldman at his home in Brentwood, and the Knicks beat the Rockets 91-84 at Madison Square Garden to take a 3-2 lead in the series. Can you believe that? 1994 that was.
I remember being so angry at them cutting into the game.
There was a lot that was going on that day. Wasn't there a 30 for 30 on all that?
Yeah, I think there was a golf tournament. Was that one of the Greg Norman's meltdowns too, or something like that?
I thought that it might have been, but I thought there was that going on. I think there was something with was there something 94? Might have been the World Cup. Was there something soccer related?
No, but I think it was the year the Rangers won the Stanley Cup.
Oh, possible. Simpson is arrested following a lengthy and well-televised police chase by the LAPD. An estimated 95 million people, more than watched the Super Bowl, watched the coverage of the chase. So you were in the minority.
Yeah, I was definitely the minority.
That's what happened. In New York, the city was celebrating the Rangers' first Stanley Cup since 1940 with a ticker tape parade on that day. With the series tied 2-2, the Knicks win Game 5 against the Rockets. At Soldier Field, the FIFA World Cup began with the opening ceremony. The United States plays host to the World Cup for the first time, and Arnold Palmer plays his final United States Open round, shooting an 81 at Oakmont in his home state of Pennsylvania. So those are some of the things that were going on during the chase. Yeah, I thought the World Cup was happening.
I vaguely remembered the golf thing.
Yeah, I didn't remember the Arnold Palmer part of it.
Yeah, I just remember there was a golf. I remember because it was Father's Day weekend. That's usually the weekend of the U.S. Open.
How about some of these soccer anniversaries on this day? 2003, David Beckham joins Real Madrid from Manchester United. It's one of the most high-profile transfers in soccer history. That push your pile?
No.
In what is known as the match of the century, Italy defeats West Germany 4-3 in the 1970 World Cup. There were 5 goals scored in extra time. Which extra time was there?
I mean, usually extra time is only a few minutes. So, I mean, did they extend it like 8-10 minutes? I mean,
that's wild. 5 goals you don't see in a week. They scored in extra time?
I'm not seeing a month.
Jeez. First meeting between rivals in World Cup history, United States defeats Mexico 2-0 in the round of 16. How are you rivals with somebody you've never played them? I guess in the World Cup. You played them in other friendlies.
Tournaments, yeah.
Friendlies.
Yeah, the CONCACAF or whatever it's called. The
2018, Mexico stuns Germany 1-0 in the World Cup group stage. Germany would go on to be eliminated in the first round group stage for the first time since 1938. I do remember that. I remember that being kind of a big deal.
I remember that being a big deal, yeah.
2008, the Celtics, all right? The Celtics, they win their 17th title. It's 131-92 over the Lakers. Game 6. Celtics were a 24th win team, a 24-win team the year before. It's the biggest turnaround in NBA history. The head coach?
Doc Rivers. Yes. The big 3. Kevin Garnett screaming anything's possible.
So Doc Rivers wins the title in 2008. Hasn't won one since. Has that time passed him by? Much like people think about Stan Van Gundy.
There's a difference, and that is Doc has taken every franchise he has walked with to the postseason and had success. And don't forget that Celtics team should have won 2 championships.
But you're one of those guys that doesn't like the retreads and giving these guys a chance. He's been in Orlando, Boston, L.A. This is his 4th stop.
And he's had success all of them. Stan Van Gundy did not have success every stop he was at. He only had success at 2 of them.
All right. 2, not bad. Success at
2 out of 4.
Well, the 4th one just ended.
Yeah, didn't have success.
Right, but he had success at 2 out of 3.
Previously.
Now he has 2 out of 4.
Well, you got to include last year. Come on.
Well, now, but I'm saying when he got hired, you were mad because he's a retread, and how many chances is this guy going to get?
Yeah.
Well, he was successful in 2 of his 3 stops.
Yeah, well, there also was a gap of time between when he was in Miami.
But like Terry Stotts, for instance, if he gets a job, you have a problem with that?
No, because this will be Terry's 3rd job. And he got the Blazers to a conference finals. So, maybe his time just ran out in Portland, kind of thing.
There's no question with that. I mean, I think it was time.
I think
he
some
was
guys
Brett Brown out there. They got him as far. Time for a new voice.
I think some guys, you just say, all right, well, it just didn't work out. Like when Budenholzer got hired in Milwaukee, I was like, all right, that makes sense. It didn't work out in Atlanta. Maybe it works out in Milwaukee. But some of these guys, like the D'Antonis of the world, it's just like, how many jobs is this guy going to get?
Kobe Bryant scored 10 points in the 4th. L.A. comes back to beat the Celtics 83-79 at Staples. Game 7 of the NBA Finals. That's the 5th title for Kobe, and it happened on this day in 2010. That's Do You Remember? Sports Bash coming up on the other side. Stick around. This hour brought to you by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Because on the other side, we'll talk to Mark Jackson from NBC Sports Philadelphia, and he joins me next. We are live here on A Sports Bash Thursday. It's brought to you this hour by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. Download the Prop Swap app today. Mark Jackson, NBC Sports Philadelphia pre- and post-game live analyst, had a passionate conversation last night post-game after the Sixers fall a 26-point lead, and after a night before when they blow an 18-point lead. Egregious both. But what's the pattern? What keeps happening? Is there something that happens in both of those games that we can correlate back to? Let's bring Mark Jackson in to the conversation here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And Mark, you blow two leads like that in the second half when you have a chance to take advantage of this. Do you see any correlation from Game 4 and Game 5? Is there something that happened in both of those games, or are these two totally different scenarios?
Well, I think when Atlanta went on a run both times, it's with the bench. It wasn't with the Sixers starters. It wasn't with Atlanta starters. The comeback was done when the Sixers had their bench in the game. Atlanta had their reserves in the game. That's when that run happened. So that's the correlation that worries me. Because you got to play your bench. It's not like you say, well, you know what? We're not playing our bench no more. That never works out.
Right, and I know that people are saying he stuck with that bench unit too long. He did play them in the first half, and he said we got some good stuff from them in the second half. Did he stick with them too long, or should you do what the Nets did the night before and just say, guys, Game 5 is the most important. I need you to give me everything you got tonight to the starters.
You know what? Listen, I was impressed with seeing KD play 48 minutes. Because that's a lot to ask on a guy for an NBA game to play the entire game, and I don't know if Joel Embiid has that in him physically to play 48 minutes. But I wouldn't be opposed to say, Ben, you just let me, or Joel, you just let me know when you're tired. You come off a minute. You let me know when you go right back in, because it's almost like that's what you have to do. Even though the bench played pretty good throughout the course of the regular season, I just am worried that's two straight games. When Atlanta goes to their bench and Sixers go to their bench, bad things happen for the Sixers.
Yeah, and obviously there's a couple things that bad things were last night. I guess everybody today is looking at Ben Simmons and the lack of shots, the 4 for 14. Now, we've had people come on and say, look, the Sixers, they account for his poor free throw shooting and the lack of offense. They don't really ask him to score. But when Tobias Harris only gives you 4, they find that to be a bigger problem. I think they're both 1 and 1A. I mean, Ben Simmons, I thought, was terrible last night late in that game. But does Doc Rivers have his hands tied with a guy that he has backed back?
help. Now, with that being said, offensively, there's different ways to look at this. People say, oh, well, Joel and Seth was hot, so we just hold that hot hand. That's one way to look at it. But then the other way to look at it is like, hold on now. Joel and Seth pretty much got all the touches in the second half. So everybody else got cold. We need to feed everybody else so when their number is called, when it's their time, they can come through for you. So like two different ways you can look at it. And it's like either way, both of them should equal to success. But unfortunately, for 2 straight games, it hasn't appeared that way.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because somebody brought that up earlier to me and said, about Tobias. And I said, well, they're not calling plays for him because they didn't trust him down the stretch. Was that why?
And now, listen, I'm a big believer in Tobias. I think Tobias is a great Rob into a Batman. But what I will say this, I've come to learn Tobias is a system player, which means Tobias is never going to have a mentality where he's going to break an offensive play to go get a bucket. He's not that kind of guy. He's just, if you call his number, he's going to go attempt to get you a bucket. And I think that hurts when your number's not called and you're not a player that's going to go get it. With that being said, that makes you have to, as a coach, you have to call his number because you know he's not going to break a play. So when Joel is going, Tobias like, okay, Joel, you got to go and just go do your thing. Go do your thing. But now you go 4 or 5 times down the floor with Tobias not being involved.
Yeah.
Now you want him to score. It's like, well, I've been sitting, I've been waiting. So now I'm kind of cold. So it's like, there's the problem. Do we keep feeding Joel? Do we get called Tobias' number in the middle of that? That's the thing that Coach Doc Rivers has to find out.
Couple minutes here with Mark Jackson, NBC Sports Philadelphia pre- and post-game analyst for Sixers pre- and post-game live tomorrow night for Sixers Game 6. What could the Sixers have done? They were abusing Seth Curry on defense. I mean, everybody says Curry played great because he scores 36. We failed to mention he got destroyed on the other side of the court. How could they have maybe done something differently to help Curry out?
I just think the way, listen, I get acknowledging that we're Phillies, so we're boxing fans. You put a right-hand guy with a great hook in a ring with a very skilled fighter, he still has a chance because he has that great right hook, meaning he has a puncher's chance. The thing about Atlanta is they shoot the ball so well. They have so many guys that can shoot the ball with lights-out tendencies that they always has a puncher's chance to come back, or they're never fully out of a game. And that's what's going on. They got all them shooters. So, yeah, I know they said they abuse Seth, but also you got to keep in mind, they just got too many darn shooters.
Yeah.
So since you got all those shooters, you just don't know what's going to happen. And that's what's coming to play. So Seth is not really being abused. I really believe it's just a mixture of them having so many shooters that it kind of hurts them.
Is this team missing Danny Green?
Absolutely. 100%. Why? He's a 3-time champion. Why? Every scenario he's been part of. Why? Because even when he's not making shots, he spaces the floor as a decoy because he has so many, he's a good 3-point shooter. Even when he's off, you're afraid to leave him. So when he's not on the floor, no matter how great Furkan is shooting the ball or whatever, it still limits your driving lanes, your spacing, because no matter if Furkan's out there or Matisse is out there, you're going to find a way to cheat off of those guys and clog the lane. So it makes it difficult for everybody else.
Larry Brown was on a podcast with John Clark over at NBC. He said something interesting about Ben Simmons. He says, I would tell him, I trust your ass. If you miss free throws or you miss a shot, it's on my ass for playing you. So what do you have to lose? Is that a message that you think would work for Ben? Like, hey, just play free and go out there. Can that message get through? Or is he past the point of a pep talk or a coach pulling it out of him?
No, I think he's past that. I think you're past that, somebody pulling it out of him. It's like it's in you or it's not. And I'm not saying he can't adjust, but asking him to adjust right now is a very difficult ask. And I'll be concerned that he's able to do that now.
Mark, it's crazy. I YouTubed Ben Simmons Summer League highlights. And in the Summer League, his rookie year, his first time down the court, he pulled up from the elbow and drained an elbow jumper. And after that, I've never seen it again. It's unbelievable. But, hey, That's not who he is. And I think the Sixers have accepted that. But if they lose this series, will they accept Ben Simmons on this team, or will they have to look to change this thing up?
Well, I don't think you – I don't know if you can say change it up. I think it would make adjustments. I think every locker room and after every last game of the season, if you're not winning the championship, and even if you do win a championship, they're always looking to do something different to improve their team. And they feel as though a move can be made to improve their team, they're going to look at that. But you got to also say, if a guy's under contract, it's hard to trade a guy. So you can say, oh, we just get rid of him. Yeah, well, if you don't want him, what makes you think somebody else wants him for what his contract is? You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah,
so
definitely.
It's not easy to make moves. It's not easy to make moves, and to say, oh, we could just make this adjustment, or we could just make this. It's not easy to say that because everybody's thinking the same thing, and your value is how much you're getting paid for the job that you're doing.
Mark, last one. What adjustment for Game 6 do they have to make?
They have to make the adjustment of finishing games, finishing possessions. You got to start in the fourth quarter like you started the game. Free. My favorite line is live like a bird, free, flying and doing your thing. And you got to be free, and no matter what. But one thing that prevents you from being as free as that is when you got to guess, well, maybe we should pull this guy because he's not doing that. Maybe we should pull that guy. Maybe this guy won't hit this shot now. That's important to understand, that you have to just go out there and play free and tell them guys, look, this is basketball. You're getting paid to win games. But during that process of winning games, you got to just go out there and be who you are and not worry about making a missing shot. And when they can do that, go out and just be and have fun in the game while attempting to win, everything will be fine. But until then, it's going to be a constant struggle.
All right, Friday night, Game 6, NBC Sports has pre- and post-game. Mark Jackson, the coach, and Amy Fadol. He is Mark Jackson at Jacko2544. Mark, thanks so much, man.
Thank you, guys. Good being with you.
Always good catching up with Mark Jackson here on the Sports Bash. And as he mentioned last night, 4 shots, not enough. 4 shots doesn't get it done. 4 shots in the game for Ben Simmons. We all want to see more. There's no question. Does he bring it out in game number 6? And then again, by the way, in game number 7. They need to win 2 in a row. Do they have it in them? You just heard them. Play free. Do what you do to get the big leads, but then stick with it. And if I'm Doc Rivers, I almost got to say, guys, the bench has helped us be who we are. But that being said, I got to ride with my horses. If my starters get me a big lead, I'm not taking them out in hopes that my bench holds it. I'm not taking them out at all. I'm hoping that the starters extend it. All right, the Rank Report. Todd Rank, what did he think about the game last night? Well, we were texting back and forth during that game last night. Stick around. It's next. All right, here we go. Final hour of the show here on the Sports Bash for Thursday. It feels like it should be Friday after all the text messages today, the video messages today. I mean, the people are hot today, which you should be. You should be angered. You should be extremely disappointed. And I told you, you're allowed to vent here. Just because I don't always agree with you doesn't mean that you're not allowed to vent. I don't agree with a lot of people, especially this man. Todd Rank is back for the Rank Report. I know that we don't agree on a lot of things, and I'm imagining, last night I would agree a lot. I mean, that was an epic meltdown. Now, the pantheon of people that I'm angered at is probably different than others.
I would agree. That was a great intro, by the way. Thank you for that, because we disagree about almost everything. And
well, our disagreements stem from how they got to this point.
Yes.
Because other stuff we agree with. You take out what this team does today based on how you feel about what this team did to get here.
Well, but not only that, Mike. Yes, I've watched the history of how they've created this team. But when I looked at the game last night, and I'm gonna speak on behalf of the fans.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pissed. I mean, that sucked. You know what I mean?
It was awful.
I mean,
I'm watching that, and I'm seeing the same thing. Look, believe me, people act like, at home, I'm watching it as a fan, and I'm not happy about it. I said to Heidi, they're going to lose this flipping game. She says, what are you talking about? Because she's not paying attention. She looked up, and it's like a 30-point game, and she's like doing her thing. I said, they're going to lose this game. And she said, are you kidding me? I said, yeah.
And not only that, Mike.
Take a step back and not be irrational, because that's not my job.
Well, but sometimes you have to be irrational, because what we're watching with our own eyes was irrational. I mean, not only did it happen last night, Mike, it happened in Game 4.
Oh, I said today at the beginning, they're at the top of the list, okay? Ben Simmons is at the top of the list, 1 and 1A, because there's a guy, Tobias Harris last night, he averages 21. He scored 4. That's a 17-point gap. Simmons played like crap, yes, but he scored 8. He only scores 13. That's 5. The one guy he took 17 off of what he normally gives you. You can't rebound when your second scorer is 17 off of his average. That's a huge problem. Simmons is more frustrating than he is the problem.
Yeah, but Gil, we got that 17 back from Seth Curry, because Seth Curry doesn't average 36 a game. He averages what, 15?
In these playoffs, I think he's around 19. But you're absolutely right about that. The problem is Curry on the other end gave up about 30.
Well, and look, you're going to give up those points, but you're right. And look, and you know I love Doc Rivers. He's got to get some of this blame too. But when I looked at it, and this is
Hold on. Let me ask you on Doc Rivers. I agree. Like, Doc, he could have made some adjustments on defense, and it's 40-19 in that 4. Like, there's something he could have done maybe. But the bench unit's playing terribly, right? He goes to the starting unit, they're playing terribly. So everyone's like, you can't play this guy. You got to get this guy off the floor. Who's left?
Well, my anger with Doc has nothing to do with X's and O's last night. My anger with Doc.
Well, I'm fair with that. Like, to me,
yeah,
the coach, to me, you know what I feel about the coach. The impact is lower on the list. But if you're saying it's not an X and O thing, okay, then I can jive with that.
Yeah, no, my anger with Doc is he's enabled this Simmons too long, and he's tried to protect him too long. And not only Doc, but the team, the franchise itself. I look at Ben Simmons.
Isn't that the league, though?
Isn't that the league?
They're talking about Zion's family wants him out of New Orleans. They don't like the way the franchise has handled him. These players, they don't want to be coached. They don't want to be held accountable. They don't want that.
Okay, but if you don't, then if you're a team with a guy like a Doc Rivers, should come in there and say, I get the best out of my players, and if he's not going to listen to me, then we don't need him, right? We got to ship him. And that's the problem is if the owner, the GM goes, figure it out, work with this kid. But even that, Mike, I have an issue with this franchise in that They've coddled this kid from day one. They say he's got all these other talents, so we're not going to force him into worrying about taking a jump shot, making a free throw, because he does so many other things great. I'm sorry. Regular season, it doesn't matter. Even when you're up 25 in the first half of a game, it doesn't matter. But when you're late in the fourth quarter, Mike, and you can't run your offense because your point guard can't touch the ball for fear that either he's going to be fouled or that he's going to miss those free throws, I'm sorry, your whole offense has now changed. They've had to change their game in the last 4 minutes of both these games, and I told you during the year, it's going to come to bite them, and these last 2 games it has. And this is against a team, by the way, Mike, that I know you give them more credit than I do, this Atlanta Hawks team. I think they're playing well above their ceiling right now, but I also think the Sixers are just handing it over on a silver platter.
It's clear. And this is where, I would agree with what you're saying now because it is clear Simmons shot 60% from the line. Okay, that's not good.
During the year,
right. He shot 60% from the line. If he makes 60% in this series, the series is over. The Hawks wouldn't have won 1 game. But my point is, it's clear that something is up with him at the free throw line. I mean, he's at 32%. That's unheard. It's unfathomable to be.
And that's going to have teams doing what they're doing, right? I mean, the reality is, and this is what I thought about, Mike, because I know you and me go back and forth. If he makes 1 out of 2, it doesn't really hurt him. I actually am thinking of it from a different perspective. Not only could he miss those free throws, which he has been, 4 for 14 last night? But beyond that, Mike, you know what that does when they start to foul him? It changes the flow of the game. It changes the mentality of the team. Here we go again. It changes more than just whether he makes those baskets or not. And I think that's a big part that people don't think about. The game is in a flow. The Sixers are playing well. They're up. You said they started fouling him when they were up like 20 points. They started fouling him.
Yeah, but I don't think last night it was – and I see what you're saying. You're not wrong about that. But the hack of Ben last night, he was making those. It was the ones that he was getting fouled in the course of the game that he ended up – they hacked him. He made both of them, and then they stopped because he stepped to the line, and he made both, and they got away from that. They only really did it a hand – but it's like I get it. If you're 4 for 14, they lose. That's 10 points they lost out on. The thing that I'm saying is like whatever has happened to him from the end of the regular season to now is obviously affecting his whole game because he hasn't been a good free throw shooter, but he still does other things to help this guy be better and that guy be better, and he puts that guy in the right spot, and he does this. But now because of the whatever's going on free throw wise, even the other stuff that he typically does really well has now diminished.
And he can't do those things, Mike, at the end of the game. Did you see the last possession for the Sixers last night? He was in the game, which was surprising to me, but he took the ball out of bounds. Once he passed
he does that a lot.
Yeah, but my point is, last possession of the game, he's the one who opens up the floor and facilitates and gets people open. He threw the ball in bounds, Mike, and hid in the corner and never came back to the ball because if he does, they can intentionally foul him when he has the ball.
But my point is they do that late in the game with him a lot because of his free throw problems. He's the inbounder, and they typically will go to Tobias Harris and try to get him one-on-one in the mismatch. They'll have Simmons screen to get the mismatch, and then he'll get out of the play, and then it's Harris. Well, Harris was giving you nothing last night. Harris goes baseline on the inbounds. He's got a wide-open layup, and he passed it to Embiid because he didn't want the shot. And Embiid's like, what are you giving it to me for? He gave it right back to him. He's like, I got 3 guys on me, dude.
And by the fourth quarter, Mike, Embiid was gassed. I mean, you could see it in his shots. You could see it in his moves. He had nothing left.
I think he scored 5 points in the second half last night. He scored 37, so it's hard to sit here and bang on the guy who scored 37 points. But he only had 5 in the second half, and it's like some nights 37 is great. But other nights, if you're on that next level, you're Kevin Durant, you might need 45 for your team to win.
Yeah, but he needs a Robin, Mike. And
I know that. But
he needs help.
Robin was supposed to be Harris, and Harris scored 4. The problem is the fans want the Robin to be Simmons, and he's not the Robin. The Robin is Harris.
But you don't think when anybody looks at this Sixers team, and again, money contracts, the guys are getting the max deals. They're looking at Simmons for all that he's supposed to be. He is supposed to legitimately be the number 2 on this team.
Well, Harris gets paid the same amount that he does. I mean, they both have the max deals.
But talent-wise, now offensively, Tobias Harris is a better shooter. There's no question about that. But as a full package, who's supposed to be the better player and do more for the team, it should be Simmons. The problem I have, Mike, is this kid.
Well, that's solely based on draft position only,
and maybe process. Maybe the process,
right, and how they acquired him.
Yeah,
sure.
Right. Maybe that's the conversation too. He was in the process, so we believe him and Embiid are the 2 big names. They're the big guys coming from the process.
Right, and the problem is that's what they know is we lost 10 games. The result was we got this guy number 1, and because we only won 10 games, the prize was this guy was supposed to take us to someplace we haven't been in a long time. And guess what? Maybe he's not that guy.
Well, maybe he's not that guy unless he transforms mentally, Mike.
Let me ask you this. Do you think Giannis can win the title like as the best player on the team?
I don't believe so as it's composed today. I don't believe Milwaukee can win the championship.
Not this particular Milwaukee team, but like if Giannis Antetokounmpo is your best player, can you win the title?
I think they actually can. Now, granted, things got to go certain ways, right? We have to remember things are going to happen. There's going to be injuries and all. If everybody stayed completely healthy,
sure,
it's going to be hard.
But his skill set, his limitations are what holds them back. No?
Correct. Like his lack of 3-point shooting. Again, he's a lot where he drives. Free throw shooting has become mental for him because I think overall he's a better free throw shooter than Simmons, but he's just mentally broken down right now.
He is. He is definitely a better free throw shooter.
I mean, Gil, these guys are making $100+ million. Where are the psychiatrists? Where are the therapists? John Smoltz, somebody reach out to John Smoltz and say, who fixed you? Because these guys need a guy to get into their head and talk to them, calm them down, and really get them to be able to relax and get outside of the outside noise. Because I'm telling you, I know it's more mental. Now, with Simmons, though, I will say this. Beyond the free throw shooting, Mike, this team's in trouble in the future. Because if this coach and this franchise continue to be enablers and they don't tell him and give him some tough love and say, hey, look, you're going to be up at 4 a.m. every morning. I'm going to meet you in the gym, and we're going to shoot 500 jump shots from everywhere on the floor because we're going to get you past this. You're better than this. But if they sit there and give him $130 million and go, hey, we don't want you to shoot. You don't need to shoot. That's the worst advice they could give him, Mike.
Oh, I agree.
Agree?
I totally agree with the fact that I can't believe they have acquiesced to, hey, this is okay. But my point is the Sixers have said this is who we're okay with this being you. Be the best defensive player in the league. Be the guy like who makes Curry better, who makes Harris. So they essentially have said, we understand you're not going to score. That's not what you want to do. So if you're not going to do that, you need to make these guys, and they put their eggs in the Harris basket of, hey, he's going to give you one-on-ones. He's going to give you mismatches, because Harris gets mismatches all the time. Why? Because Simmons is 6'10". Somebody's got to defend him, which means Harris ends up getting the smaller player on him all the time. The problem is, like in the last series, the Wizards are sending the guy who should be defending Harris, they're sending him to Simmons. The guy who's supposed to be defending the point guard, Neto, he's on Harris. So Harris is constantly getting the mismatch. So the Sixers have banked on Harris is good enough. He'll take advantage of the mismatch. Simmons will get him the ball and we'll be okay. Well, in this series, Harris is coming up very small.
And let's do some comparisons, Mike. Let's think about this. Harris, to me, is he even comparable to a Chris Middleton with Giannis? He's not Giannis, comparable.
Like Giannis is, I mean, Middleton is, they're both like low-level all-stars. Like, yeah.
Exactly. He's not a PG-13 to Kawhi Leonard's. Like, he's not that number 2. So as you looked at this team, but the point is the Sixers and the Sixer fans looked at this team this year and said, this is a possible championship. This is a team we can make a run to the championship with. Now, we're in a second round against.
That's weird, though, because that's weird because they last year had a mediocre year. They were the 6th seed and they got swept. So in the beginning of this year, the expectations were, why is this team going to be any better? It's the same team. All you did was you basically got rid of Richardson and Horford and brought in Danny Green and Curry. Why would I think you're going to be any better?
Well, the progression of the 2 young stars. I mean, the progression
from the 6th seed to the 1 seed, I think was not an expected jump, I guess I should say.
Well, and you and me have talked offline, right? The Nets healthy would be the number 1 seed. We know that, right? The Bucks easily could have probably slid into the 2. So realistically, the Sixers were looking at a 3 seed.
Exactly, right. That's right. Like, so this year was almost like Morey came in and it was like, let me try to clean up the financial mess that this team was in with Al Horford's contract. Josh Richardson was not a fit, couldn't shoot. So let me get rid of those 2 guys and see if I can I don't think they really thought I'm going to do this and we're going to be a championship contender. That kind of manifested.
But this series now, as we look at it, and what has happened.
Epic fail, by the way.
Well, and I still think they should be favored to win this series. I mean, they've dominated this series.
Well, they're favored in the game, by the way, on Friday night.
Of course they are. I mean, I've talked to friends offline. I said, look, the Sixers should still win this series. I mean, they basically have already won it. They just gave it away. If they don't come out of this second round, Mike, and even if they do, I'm looking at this team and how they are playing and the pieces and how they fit late in games in the playoffs. I don't give them any chance in the Eastern Conference Finals after I'm watching this. Would you give them a chance if they can somehow slip through this series? As you look at this team, you're not worried? Do you think they recover, they regroup, that something magical different happens in the next round?
No, I think they would be a clear underdog in the next round against either one of the teams. I told you, I don't like playing Milwaukee because I think it's a bad match for them. Because Giannis can defend Ben and kind of take him away. But right now, with the way Ben's going, I mean, he is completely diminished from the Ben. What he does very well that people don't appreciate is he typically controls the style and the pace of the game. If he wants to get out and running, he does. If he wants to slow it down and he finds guys, he's very patient. He'll back his way into the paint. He waits for the double team. He doesn't pass out of it too early. He waits for your guy. And that second that you commit too much, bang, that's when he hits that pass. And Seth Curry standing there filing his nails. He's so wide open. So I appreciate all those parts. But he could be Giannis, I think. He could score 30, but the question would be, I don't know, you can't win with that guy either. So I think they're saying his limitations, we couldn't win with them either. So be this guy. Be the best version of this guy.
Well, if you're telling me, I mean, if Giannis had Embiid, I think they'd be a pretty good favorite to win it all. So my point is, if Simmons was going to be even 8-10,
they could have had Embiid, by the way, the Bucks, and they took Jabari Parker instead.
Ooh, there's been a little movement in the NBA now, huh?
Ooh.
No, look, I'm concerned for the Sixers. You can't blow those 2 leads like that. I also look at Simmons. They've already paid him the $130-some million. I talked about it with you, with our old producer, PG. Where's the incentive for this kid other than if you're Kobe Bryant going to the gym at 4 a.m. because you want to be the greatest? I don't know that Simmons has that innate in him to say, I know that there's one piece to my game that I've just simply got to have as a threat. I don't need to shoot the ball, but the team needs to know that I can shoot it and make it at any time so that it's a threat. Because the last 5 minutes of the game, Mike, the Sixers are playing 4-on-5. And that's the reality offensively. They're playing 4-on-5. And it's going to bite them, and it has in this series. And it would only bite them more so when you're playing a better team like the Nets or Bucks. The Suns are going to implore that same if the Sixers were able to make it to the finals.
Yeah, so the whole 4-on-5 thing we hear a lot, but they have figured out a way to kind of like utilize him without using him, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? They use him as a screener, almost the way that the Warriors use Draymond Green, who really can't shoot, right?
No, but they're not asking him to. And And he isn't a liability late because he can still facilitate the offense. Why? Because he can make free throws.
Well, that's the one difference. But during the season, that wasn't an issue. Like, you got a guy shooting 60%. Okay, you can kind of live with it. He makes 1 or 2 late in the game if you have the lead, yada, yada, yada. The problem is he's gone from 60 to 30. That's where the issue has become. That's something that's unforeseen. So when you're telling me this during the year, I say, okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, he's shooting 60%, but still, he's gone from 60 to 30. That's where the rub has become, where he is completely – dude, they are on their feet cheering when he goes to the line, trying to be like, come on, little Johnny, come on, you can do this. You got guys in the crowd going, come on, like this, man. You see that guy? He's all over the place, the guy. He's shooting, going, come on, you got this. It was like when Fultz got here and they wanted him to make the 3, and it was like, you've almost now shamed the guy.
Well, this is my problem. I told you, this guy needs to focus. Shut up. If you're in that stadium, shut up and let this kid focus. I mean, all that cheering's only making him more nervous, probably.
Like I said, it's almost counterproductive that you're out there cheering for this guy, because now you're making him feel like he's, the guy who, like, hey, the coach says, hey, I got this guy on my team. He never plays. Can you let him get in the game and maybe even, like, let him get a hit? Like, we'll put him on base. Okay. And then he gets on base and the price is going. That's what you've turned Simmons at the free throw line into.
It's the pitcher who can't throw a strike. After 12 balls, he throws a strike and the crowd gives him that cheer, and it's the home crowd.
Right, the Bronx cheer. Somebody actually tweeted at me and said, remember the guy in Major League 2, Rube Baker, the phenom catcher? The one problem is he couldn't throw the ball back to the pitcher.
So maybe we give him a little bit of some magazines at the free throw line to take a look at if you're Simmons. Maybe that'll help him.
Little Kardashian in lingerie.
Put that right.
Hold that up behind the basket when he's there.
Put it right there on the backboard. Maybe he'll bank it in. I mean, whatever needs to happen. But Mike, again, we laugh about it. For the Sixers fans, they probably threw up last night, to be honest with you. As we look forward, though, this becomes a big problem for the Sixers, because as much good as Simmons gives you, Mike, the liability is too great. And I also think, and I told you this last night, Embiid and him aren't best friends to begin with. You don't think Embiid's looking at these last 2 games going,
I do.
What in the heck am I with?
Embiid's face last night said, we are not good enough.
Right?
The realization set in of, here we go again, we're not good enough. Now, Doc Rivers is speaking. He just said, quote, it's a mental thing. We know that. We all know that. One thing you got to do is keep working on him. Try a routine, and maybe you can lose the mental part. Well, guess what? You ain't losing the mental part in game 6 at this stage.
This is my problem, Mike. And again, I don't think you fix it this year. So that's where they're in a real dilemma, because, again, I don't think it's about shooting and just getting over it mentally. No, you need help. Somebody needs to come in and coach you, mentally get you right, focused on other things that obviously you're not focused on when you're there. There's got to be more to it, because it's not physical. You've told me, Mike, you've seen him in practice. He makes free throws. You've seen him make jump shots. There is a block that he simply can't get over when he gets in the game. I mean, when I see his defender, Mike, sitting inside of the free throw line, giving him about 7 feet of room to work with, that's a problem, Mike.
Oh, it's the same if you watch the Bucks game the night before. Blake Griffin is defending Giannis, and he's hanging out in the paint.
Yep, it's exactly the same thing.
That shot, go for it. And Giannis just goes, all right, I'm going to grind he almost like grinds it into 4th gear from first and just goes, and he just puts his shoulder down. That's all he knows how to do.
He revs it up, and he just comes at you, and he tries to get around you to get a blocking foul. I mean, it's a similar game. I think that's also why I agree with you. I don't think Giannis, with the team as constructed, is going to win it. Again, I mean, you watch a guy like Kevin Durant go off for 49. You got a guy with Harden on one leg. He can't give you anything offensively. He's just there to kind of run the offense. That was an unbelievable performance. I know it's Sixers talk today for sure, but I do have to say, that's really for the Mayweather fan that goes, the Fairweather fan, I should say, that looks at KD and goes, well, he's never done it on his own. Everybody knows how great Kevin Durant is. Who knows basketball? That just cemented for some people oh, he did that on his own.
Oh, listen.
Yeah, of course he can.
Durant was my favorite player. I hated what he did to go to Golden State, but I will still say he is number one or number two. And I mean, even though I completely disliked what he did, it doesn't matter whether I like you, dislike you. I'm going to what Durant did rubbed me the wrong way. I don't think he needed to take that easy way out. He had the opportunity, like LeBron, to win on his own. He did not need to do what he did, and that bothered me because I love Durant. He was my favorite guy. That being said, he's a killer. He's the best.
And the point by that performance the other night, Mike, is he didn't go there because he felt he needed to win the championship. I think he went there because he wanted to go there. And of course, you're going to go where you think you have an ability to win a championship. He doesn't. It may be a guy that says, I don't want to play by myself. I don't want to score 60 a night by myself. I want to play with a team that I have fun with, that other stars are on the team, and we all score. I don't care if I score 50 one night or not, but I can if you want me to, but I don't need to. The other night was just so much fun from a perspective of a fan to watch not only a guy who's overcome an Achilles injury that is remarkable, doesn't even look like he was ever injured in his life, and is able to put up a performance. And by the way, he played pretty good defense that game too. So 48 minutes, offense, defense. You and me, Gil, we would have been crawling on the floor after 3 minutes of that game, just trying to catch our breath. I don't know how this guy does it for 48 straight minutes. I mean, kudos to LeBron as well and all these other guys who can put, 45 to 48 minutes on the floor.
Now, Doc Rivers has said that he kind of hinted at anyway that they're going to shorten their bench in game number 6.
And that was one issue that you really had a problem with. You felt like that needs to be done.
Well, because I said what Nash did. He said, look, we got to win this game 5 through hell or high water. He played Durant 48 minutes, and he played Harden, who didn't do anything for 42 minutes.
Yeah.
Because he valued – game 5 to him was the most – because if we win game 5, we'll beat you in one of the next 2.
Right.
And I think that's the Sixers – Doc Rivers should have looked at that game last night of, we're on our home court. We're going to leave it all out on the table here. And he coached that game the same way he did on Tuesday night in February.
But the problem is, Mike, it was working. 2 minutes left in the third. They were up 25 points. I mean, I can't tell Doc that he did anything wrong in that sense. I mean, 2 minutes left in the third. You're up 25.
Okay, that's fine. But in the second half, when the second unit's out there and they're on like a 15 to something run. At that point, I don't let you get to that run. I say, all right, we're not messing around. Get back out there.
Well, I mean, do you think he brought him in too late, the starters? You let him rest too long and let
they were up 26. They put them
14?
back in. I think they were up 11, 13 or 11, something like that.
Yeah.
So he diminished the lead, 14 points.
And Mike, I watched that game with you. Not with you, but from LA, and I'm telling you, that Atlanta team didn't even want to be there. I remember texting you going, this Atlanta team, they stayed home this game. They decided, hey, we'll just wait for game 6 at home and try to even it up. They weren't even invested in this game, Mike, until the end of that third quarter.
It's funny. Late when we're watching these games, I have to get off that text because I'm on YouTube TV and I'm like a little bit behind sometimes. And you guys are giving me what happened. And I'm like, I got to get off this.
Oh, because I forget you're on that YouTube TV.
Right. So I'm like a split, like a couple seconds behind. And you send me to Ben Simmons. He makes them. He makes them both. And then he misses. I'm like, wait, this hasn't even happened yet. Oh, my God.
You were loving it when I said he makes them both. Those are big makes. You're like, yes. But
right,
man.
exactly. So, all right.
It's tough. What's going to happen?
All right, stay there. All right. I got to take a quick break. We'll come back.
All right.
609-403-0973. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, you can watch this show, what we're talking about. You can see Todd and I live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as many of you are today. It's been a huge video audience. We appreciate you all. And if you're listening on the radio, 609-403-0973. 535 Rank Report. Todd Rank. He's the former co-host of this show, and we would certainly disagree a lot more if we were in the studio together, but we are on the live video together, and I mean, we've disagreed, but we've been somewhat cordial about it, I think.
I think
more
we have
so
to.
than, like a normal texting back and forth.
On the radio, we keep it cool for now. We get heated on that text. That text gets nice and heated throughout the night.
Well, I mean, you're the first half of the game, you're in the pool, you're not even watching it.
Well, I will say this.
I mean, somebody texted in earlier. They wanted to know if you were going to be, if you even watched the game last night, or did you watch that women's softball?
Well, come on, that women's softball was over a long time ago, but I have been watching the prep for the U.S. Open, which is on behind me in my apartment. But I will say this: it was a beautiful day in Southern California yesterday. I anticipated that the Sixers would probably blow out Atlanta, so I went to the pool to get a little dip in, get in the jacuzzi, warm up those bones and those muscles. I get back because they delayed the start of that game. I got back for the start of the second quarter. And to be honest with you, Mike, I thought I probably could turn it off at halftime, but luckily I didn't.
He said, do you think Todd watched the Sixers last night, or were his eyes glued to women's college ping pong or maybe women's college curling?
I mean, if it was on, maybe a little women's professional cornhole, I would have watched that. I love that game, a little out on the beach.
So let's if the Sixers lose the game tomorrow night and they're done.
Wow. Just wow.
Right? I mean,
stunning.
I would imagine Daryl Morey has got to think about breaking this core up.
And just a month ago, let's say a month ago, Mike, people were looking at this team as they're at the beginning now. The process has gotten them to here. They're at the beginning with a coach who is a former champion. They have the nucleus to make a run for the next 4 or 5 years.
And still played. I mean, look, Doc Rivers got here. He got here kind of late. They had this condensed, because of the COVID. Maybe Morey says, look, you get a full off season to work with this crew. I want to keep them together rather than start anew. I don't know.
But who do they – I mean, I think we know, and I think the fan base is going to tell you and let the whole team and franchise know that Simmons is a guy that's got to go. And that's who's going to –
Well, you're not trading Tobias Harris's contract, I would imagine.
No. But he's not a – but Mike, he is like a Chris Bott. He's the third piece. Tobias Harris can't be your number 2. He can't be. He's not Dwayne Wade to LeBron James.
Oh, agree.
So if Simmons isn't any of that, then Simmons got to go. I mean, you got to try and get another guy in there that can finish games, that has the free throw shooting, has the ability to make a tough shot late. I mean, you can't ask Seth Curry to bail you out. He's not Steph Curry. He's Seth Curry.
Correct. And you can't depend on Embiid to do it all the time because of the nature of the position that he plays. He
exactly.
Can get doubled, he can get tripled. I mean, he was 20 for 20 from the free throw line until he missed those last 2.
And I'm not going to say that's mental with him. I'm going to say that's fatigue.
Of course, he's 20 for 20. He's obviously shown he's one of the best free throw shooters in the league, by the way.
Yeah.
Curry. Doc Rivers acknowledged today that Curry was gassed because he said we should have probably ran more what we were doing with Curry. He said, but he was gassed. Which I don't like that answer.
Well, because, I mean, how many minutes did he? Well, you had to get more minutes because he was hot. You got to keep him in the game. I mean, he's the only guy scoring for you in the second half.
I know, and I think he played 30. They all played 38 minutes, I think, except for somebody. Korkmaz did not play that many. He didn't play starter, but 38 for Harris, 39 for Embiid, 38 for Simmons, 38 for Curry, 29 for Korkmaz.
I mean, again, what do you – I don't know what you do. You got Danny Green injured. Seth Curry got to step up, right? Seth got to play some more minutes.
Which he did. I mean, he stepped up. Now, I said to you, like, if they said we're going to trade Simmons, they're going to get a haul for him. I know you don't know that term, but they're going to get a lot of value in return for Simmons. And if Morey deems – I think Morey could do one of two things. Say, look, this team, I don't want to keep breaking it up. This team has gone through roster configuration after roster configuration after roster configuration. They've changed it over. They've had 4 different GMs put this team together, right? So it's a clunky mess to get to this point. Do you do that again, or do you say, I got to do my James Harden moment? This is my James Harden move right here. I got to go get the guy that I want.
I mean, if you got a guy in his prime, an MVP candidate like Embiid on your team, you're trying to make it work today. I mean, you're trying to make it work today. We disagree slightly, Mike. I do feel the more that everybody's seeing Simmons, I know he's got 3-4 pieces that are strong in his game, but everybody's seeing a real strong weakness. And I think his stock is dropping daily.
Why do you think?
But saying that, though, Mike, here's what I would say. I don't want draft picks anymore. I want a player. If you're going to trade Simmons, I don't want 2 first-round draft picks. I want a player that can impact this team right now with Embiid. And that's where I think the Sixers may be in trouble, because you got a max contract with a player who's got a weakness that everybody can see. That's a pretty big weakness. And what team is going to say, here is my star player for a really good player that you want to get rid of. I don't think the Sixers have the leverage there. So I think the Sixers are in a tough spot here because you don't want draft picks, Mike. You want a guy right now that matches up with Embiid.
Like Morey might want to go get his own guy. He might want to go and say, he might try to target a bad team and say, look, you're not going to get a guy in the draft that's as accomplished as this guy. So give us your 2 first-round picks, and I'll give you this guy. If you're getting it from a team that's going to be drafted in the top, 3, 4, 5.
And then maybe can he take those picks almost immediately and use them to maybe give it to another team? Because another team may actually say, we value more getting a couple first-round picks and giving you our star.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at, like, what's going on out there. I mean, Dame Lillard's in Portland. Is he saying, look, this is a Truman Show. I know what's going on every single year. I'm getting to the playoffs. I'm getting knocked out. Now they fired the coach out there finally. So maybe he says, okay, I'll give it another run here. But, dude, this league is so volatile that you never know from year to year that does Luka Doncic just say, I don't want to be here anymore?
Right. I mean, you heard the talk today, Zion Williamson, his family, they don't want him in New Orleans. Again, that's just a rookie, not a rookie, but he's on a rookie contract. That's a young kid.
This is the show before earlier today was saying about how Ben Simmons gets paid this much and he's not on the court. And I said, but that's the problem in the league is that there's so few players of the magnitude of a Durant or a LeBron that everybody else is not good enough. Like if you are the next batch of guys, you're deemed not good enough. But like if you are Milwaukee, you have to make this decision. They're paying Giannis $50 million at the end of his super max deal. He has now hit super max status. He's getting $50 million. And they might say, well, he's not good enough. His offensive limitations. But we also can't let him walk because then what are we? That's the problem that becomes. So that's why it's hard to now judge the guys based on, well, you're paying him for this. You're not paying him because you think he's a franchise player. You're paying him because if you don't, you're left with the bag of crap in your hand.
Well, and the problem is somebody else will pay him.
Exactly. So if the Sixers don't give Tobias Harris the deal that he gets, he'll go to someone else and get that deal. But if Tobias Harris leaves the Sixers and they don't give him that deal, what are they, the 8th seed? And you're back on that hamster wheel of being stuck in the middle again. Yeah,
but Mike, they're the number 1 seed this year, and if they lose to the Atlanta Hawks in the second round, they're still stuck in the middle, kind of. I mean, you're getting to the second round and you're losing. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's not good enough.
That's fair to say. If they lose this again, you're right back where they've constantly been, which is, hey, this year you were the 1 seed, you used to be the 8th seed, getting knocked out in the first round. I mean, they have not won a second round playoff round series since the Iverson year when they went to the finals. That's the last time they won a second round game.
And to your point, Mike, they can only get rid of Simmons if they feel they're going to get better. Because with Simmons, they were a number 1 seed. Now, we already have talked about Milwaukee and the Nets and the injuries and everything else. But the reality is, this was their best chance to date, where they're the number 1 seed, home court advantage. For the most part, they were healthy. Danny Green gets injured, but the rest of the team overall was healthy. This was their best shot. If you get rid of Simmons, because you don't think with Simmons you can get over the hump, you've got to be able to bring a guy in immediately that you think will input into Simmons' position and be a better version. Now, he may not be as good defensively. He may not be as long, as big, but you're going to gain something else offensively that you simply don't have with Simmons. That's where Morey's going to have to go search, and he's going to have to find out, is there a taker for Simmons? But more importantly, what could we get in return if they're interested in Simmons? Because you're a number 1 seed this year, Mike. You get rid of Simmons and you become a 5 seed. That's not going to look good either.
Nope, not at all. And that's the fine line of, do I pay this guy and we're the 1 seed and maybe we're a championship contender, maybe we're not, or do I let him go and we fall back to the 6, 7, 8 and we're getting knocked out in the first round? And then what ends up happening is the apathy sets in. I mean, when you were here and we were doing the show, nobody cared about that team. Nobody.
Well, we were at the beginning of the process, were we not?
It was the year before that really happened. That was when they had Bynum. Remember, they traded for Bynum.
Oh.
People think that the Bynum trade was the precipice, that was the move that set them off of, look, we went out and tried to get a franchise player, and that blew up in our face. We got to start over. Because they traded Iguodala to get him, and that was the whole thing, is we got this franchise center.
Young. He was young at the time. He had just come off the Lakers, right?
He won a championship, and it was like, hey, let's take a chance and go get him. That blew up in their face, and then the next regime came in and said, we got to start over. So, but before that whole thing, you had Andre Iguodala and Evan Turner and Thaddeus Young and Spencer Hawes. I mean, nobody cared about that team.
Well, look.
You knew what that team was. It was, of course. They were 42-42, and they were getting knocked out in the first round. You knew that. You could write it down before the season started.
No, and look, the Sixers, there's value to the conversation, right? There's a conversation about the Sixers now every day.
Every day.
The problem is, Mike, you've got to be able to get there just once. You got to get there to the top, and you got to be able to pull one of those championships to then have relevancy to the game, right? To the checkers or the chess moves that you're making. You've got to be able to get there. And if they can't even get to the Eastern Conference Final, which, by the way, was totally expected this year, if they can't get there, Mike, there's going to be a lot of heads rolling, and there's going to be a lot of questions, and this fan base is not going to be pleased. I mean, they're already freaking out, even if the Sixers come back to win this series.
You're right.
I mean, this fan base.
What was that? James Ingram that sung Just Once. Can we figure out what we keep doing wrong?
It's a great song.
But we never last for very long. What are we doing wrong? Just once. You just want it one time.
You missed that karaoke over the last year and a half.
We got that gold mic. Remember when we were getting the pedicures?
Of course we did.
We bought that gold mic, and it's a staple at our house on those Saturday nights.
We got a standing ovation when we were down there in Clearwater singing on that golden mic.
All right, I got to go. I'm way past time.
You and me both. I'm heading to see Ohtani tonight, baby.
You going to the game?
I'm going to that Angels game.
That Dodger Stadium's right up the road where those Phillies were here. You pass on that, you go to that Orange County.
Can I tell you, there's so much more value to the tickets I received for this Angels game. And I'm getting the Babe Ruth of our time tonight. I get to see this man pitch a no-hitter and hit a couple of home runs. It's going to be a scene.
All right, see ya.
All right, buddy.
All right, here we go. Let's try to get some sound in today. Let's play one real quick. This is Keith Smith today.
They've learned how to work around Simmons. Harris not being there, they can't win without him scoring and carrying a pretty heavy offensive load. You need him.
All right, so he says they've learned how to work around Simmons' deficiencies, but you can't have Harris. That's what I said. I mean, yeah, I get Harris pisses you off. His limitations are what they are, but the team has almost factored that into a game. They can't factor Tobias Harris scoring 4. Is Keith Smith right?
He is right, because this team was not built for Ben Simmons to score, period. This team was for Ben Simmons to be a facilitator.
People don't like to hear that. And
no,
I understand their frustration, and I get it. I totally get it. But I'm just telling you, I'm giving you the message that
you're trying to be practical in a world that's impractical, Mike Gill.
Right, like if I was Joe Fan and I'm out there, I'm saying, Ben Simmons needs to score 35 because I know he can. Yeah, that's how Mike Gill, the fan, thinks. I know Ben Simmons could score 25 points if he was pushed to or wanted to. My point is the team's not asking him to do that. And there's where your frustration as a fan comes in. I've given up that side of it. Mike Gill, the fan, has given up on being frustrated because the team's saying, we're not asking you to do this. But I believe they could get more from him. I think he can score 20, 25 points a game. If he could score as much as Giannis does. He's got just the same limitations. All right, Scoop B's coming up at 6:20 on game night.